Nearest the refreshment table, we have Sodak Compost, and they have brought with them a bin designed for food waste. So please keep that in mind as you look to discard items in the correct bins. Your food waste can be taken care of in a compost bin over there. I would also like to take this opportunity to note that this event is being run by Sodak 350 and is different from the sustainability sessions that are being run throughout the city. Those are run by the City of Sioux Falls. And if you'd like to provide input on the Sioux Falls Sustainability Plan, there are 2 sessions remaining. They're up on the 17th of November at Cal and Oakview libraries respectively. And public comments are encouraged through their website through 5th of December, I believe. And that's all available on the Sustainability Plan website as well. To give you a little more information about Sodak 350, Sodak 350 is a local independent affiliate of the international350.org organization. It is a nonpartisan grassroots movement that is mobilizing South Dakotans to take actions to address the climate crisis. Through education and community building and educational events such as this, 350 and their volunteer-led teams are promoting local and state-level climate solutions and advancing a just transition for a sustainable South Dakota. Although he was unable to attend today, chairperson for Sodak 350, Dr. Michael Heisler, has arranged for a video introduction. Arlene, if I could have some assistance finding that on your computer here, we'll go ahead and start with the welcome from Dr. Heisler.
Good morning. My name is Michael Heisler. I'm the chair of the steering committee of Sodak 350. Let me add my thanks and my welcome to all of you for being here this morning. Sodak 350.
Like that, we didn't get that. Oh, yeah. Technical difficulties. We'll get it out of the way now, so then it's.
What are you plugged into?
I just got an HDMI. Well, I was on.
Just out of curiosity, how many of you did bring your own lunches today? Excellent, wonderful, thank you all. Yeah, round of applause. Don't forget to sign up for door prizes. That was one of the perks if you brought in a mug for your own beverage today.
My name is
You're
Michael
eligible
Heisler.
for one of those amazing door prizes that are back. Kara's back at the table there if you on our breaks if you want to take a look and see what you'd be entered for. But again, thank you for bringing your bottles. It's wonderful.
Video display. Yeah, do the display.
Just the audio.
Yeah, yeah, for sure.
We can just, yeah, I can just flip the thing around. I can kind of.
For what it's worth, yeah. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
Mine have video switched to the other one, so.
Okay, here's what we're gonna do.
We may just go with audio. That's, yeah, it's a rather
It doesn't
small-
show a whole lot, but it's Mike's house. Stacy had a hand in. Okay, here we go.
My name is Michael Heisler. I'm the chair of the steering committee of SODAC 350. Let me add my thanks and my welcome to all of you for being here this morning. SODAC 350 is a grassroots nonprofit committed to taking action that impacts climate change in a measurable way. We're also committed to collaboration and to partnership. And as an example of that, today's forum is co-sponsored by the Sioux Falls League of Women Voters. As you will see, we've been able to pull together a remarkable group of presenters and panelists who will begin the morning by talking about what's happening across the country in terms of sustainable action. And then we'll transition to a discussion about the impact of the recently passed Inflation Reduction Act, including specific actions that we can each take to make a real difference. We're standing in front of a passive solar home, just as an example, that Jean and I built 10 years ago. The construction cost for this place was 10% more than a standard home, but each month it decreases our energy costs and our carbon impact by 80%. But you don't have to build a passive solar home. There are lots of things we can do individually and together, and we'll talk about some of those this morning. These certainly are challenging times that we live in, but I remain convinced that there's still an opportunity to take action that can lead to an equitable and just, sustainable, and carbon-free future for our children and our grandchildren. So let's roll up our sleeves and get to work. And thank you all again for being here this morning.
All right, well, if he was here, I would thank him, but in his absence, those are still wonderful, wonderful reminders for why we're here. And again, thank you all for coming. This has been already a wonderful turnout, and we appreciate all of you coming to learn more about all of this. It is now my honor to introduce Dr. Megan Jarchow. Megan is a USD Associate Professor and Chair of the Department of Sustainability and Environment at USD. Her specific focus in the field of sustainability is on creating more multifunctional landscapes within the former Tallgrass Prairie region and in sustainability education. Her research takes an interdisciplinary approach to evaluating opportunities to enhance the multifunctionality of this region. The Jarchow Lab conducts research related to wetlands, prairies for bioenergy, and prairie management, among other topics. Delivering her keynote address, The State of Sustainability, Opportunities for Our Region, please join me in welcoming Dr. Megan Jarchow.
And I'm so glad I don't have to be responsible for doing the technology. And when it doesn't work, I don't feel anxious. I just patiently wait for someone else to do it.
Yay.
Hello. Okay, and I only have a teeny video in here, so we have a tiny possibility for technological problems, but otherwise, I think we're good. Well, thanks for coming. I'm so delighted to be here. I think this is such a fun topic to talk about. I mean, of course, I'm in a Department of Sustainability and Environment, and so I'm delighted to talk about sustainability and also though thinking about how it provides opportunities for our region. So sustainability, you can think about it as working towards systems that are socially just and economically prosperous that support flourishing natural environments both now and into the future. And that's certainly very similar to how you might have heard definitions of sustainability. You also might have heard, that we live on a planet that has a lot of people. So we're in a place where there's a lot of people, and the people on this planet use a lot of resources. So our affluence contributes, our consumption, and just the materials and manufacturing that we need for people have a lot of impact on the world. And those would contribute to a range of impacts, environmental impacts such as pollution, social impacts in terms of injustices, biodiversity loss, health impacts, food insecurity, and challenges with that. You might have also heard, in terms of sustainability, this idea that if everyone lived, let's say, like the average person in the United States lives, we would need more Earths. This is, of course, an extreme example. This is from the ecological footprint calculator. But this idea that if everyone lived like that, there would be challenges, or the idea from Johan Rockström and the Resilience Institute out of Europe, this idea that there are planetary boundaries. And so, for example, in here, there's that little blue circle, which is the safe operating space for Earth. And then they have that red circle, which is, okay, when we're beyond that, we're beyond the capacity of Earth. And then they say, okay, what are major flows and where are we at in terms of how we, our impact on the environment related to that. So this is a rhetorical question, but how many of you have heard this story? And I suspect that most of you would have. This idea that there's a lot of challenges, we have to face the challenges, and that there's problems. I'm kind of critical of that story. I don't think anything is inaccurate with that. I think it's totally accurate. We do have these challenges, and we do need to make changes. But I think that framing of sustainability and the place that we're at is not effective. And so I understand where the idea came from. So sustainability in the United States often came from the US environmentalism movement. And there was this sense that there's these environmental challenges and there's this urgency, panic, distress, that we need to do to move forward. And of course, there was a lot of effectiveness from that. The Clean Water Act, the Clean Air Act, the Endangered Species Act were all really effective. But I would argue that if what we want is to have change, we need a different framing. It's unlikely to get people to make long-term change, or a lot of people to make change if it's based on guilt, shame, fear, doom and gloom and things like that. Instead, I think we need to have a different framing and one of hope and opportunities. So I think of sustainability as asking the questions, what kind of world do we want and how can we affect change to create that world? So within this understanding of sustainability, we'd be talking about questioning things, and often in a critical way, but we're thinking about, okay, let's understand how our systems are arranged. That it is systems, that it's not reductionism, which is a very powerful tool, but I think in sustainability and with these challenges, we have to embrace complexity and think of things at a systems type of level and acknowledge interdisciplinarity and kind of embrace some of that complexity. It's about collaboration. I think with sustainability, it's a bunch of bringing people together around common ideas and working together on those. It's related to vision. And so I don't say the question, what kind of world do we think might be possible? What kind of world do we think we could get a policy to pass? It's what kind of world do we want? So I think in the field, in environmental conservation and sustainability, it has to be grounded in the idea of what would we love to see? And then you work towards what would you love to see and find seeds of that already growing, and then you know what to foster. I think sometimes there's the idea of what do we think is possible, and then we work towards that goal, even if that ultimately would not be what we find to be desirable. And so in sustainability, some amount of this visioning being really essential. But then you wouldn't stop with a vision. It's about strategy. And since I'm at the University of South Dakota and thinking about educating, that these are all skills that you would have to train people in. How do you train people in how to think about, how might you be effective? What might be an effective strategy? It's about taking action. So unlike, some fields where you might learn about them within the field of sustainability, there is this idea that we are trying to do something. And so figuring out, how do you train people to take action? What is the action that we would like to take? Innovation, and I think this is underappreciated sometimes in sustainability. And I think there is a huge role for innovation within sustainability. It doesn't have to be what has happened in the past. I think we could be open to the fact that the future could have differences, and innovating for the future that we want might be part of that. And so similarly, again, in my role in training, how do we teach people how to think in innovative ways? How do we teach people to be transformative as opposed to incremental? Because it is different than I think some approaches to how we might think of it being in the world and certainly addressing challenges. And then I think sustainability should be place-based. There's the idea, think globally and locally, and I think there's a lot of value to that. So we should all be globally informed and understand the context that we're working in. But a lot of times I think that where we're most effective to take action is in places that we know deeply and care about very deeply. And so the extent to which, we have a broad knowledge, but then we look to take action in places where we really do know the context, and we're more likely to be able to do it in a way that's just, responsible, and then also effective. So with this in mind, I think that we can look to this region and say, oh my gosh, we have a ton of opportunities for how we might think about sustainability and even climate change in this region. So what I'm going to do for the rest of this is just give some background on why I think there are a ton of opportunities in this region for how we might think of moving forward. This is a land use map of the North American Great Plains, but just the US portion of them. This was the largest contiguous land use or ecoregion in the United States. It was the tall grass prairie, the mixed grass prairie, and the short grass prairie. And to note, that we're here at the very edge of the tall grass prairie region. And now this is a land use map from today. I haven't called out all of the land uses, but I just want to highlight cultivated crops and hay and pasture. So you'll see in this part of the country that our landscape, which historically would have been diverse perennial vegetation in tall grass prairie, is now dominated by corn and soybean. And then you can see there's also some hay and pasture. And if I just go back and forth, if you look at where the tall grass prairie was, and then now you look at where the Corn Belt is today, you'll notice they almost completely overlap. And so there is this idea that the tallgrass prairie region has tremendous soils, and it's in an area where there's sufficient precipitation where you can have rain-fed agriculture. And you see, so we're in this region, and it made sense that it got converted to row crops because it's extremely productive for it, and we had the resources to have it. And as I'll talk about in a bit, I think maybe we could consider other land uses. And when I see this map, I can't help but point out, you'll notice, there in Nebraska, Kansas, Oklahoma, down into Texas, you see all that row crops in places that are clearly too dry for rain-fed agriculture. And so I love this picture in that it's just a picture of the Ogallala Aquifer. So we can see that we have managed the landscapes in ways to get a lot of productivity. And certainly there's questions about, are we able to continue managing the landscape like that into the future? As we're all probably keenly aware in this room, that climate change is here, and there's some amount of we're going to have to think about a future with climate change. What this is talking about the global warming part of climate change. So this will be a short video that'll play, and they calculated the average temperature from 1950 to 1980, and then they got that number. Anytime that the temperature is cooler than that, you see cool colors. Anytime the temperature is warmer than that, then you see a warm color. And it's going to run from 1880 up to 2018 and in 4-year chunks, just so the video goes faster. And so you'll notice, see, this is my one opportunity for a technological challenge. There we go, I've done it. Okay, so you'll see that in the 1800s, on average, the planet was cooler than that 40-year average. Once we start to get now to about the 1930s, you see it shifts where it's about, 50-50, and it's about average. Then, of course, there's spatial variability across the globe. Now, as we get to the 1980s is where you really see the shift, where it starts to get much warmer. And then by 2018, you'll see, of course, global warming is happening. Our planet is warming, and it's not warming uniformly, and it's also not warming uniformly across the seasons. So like here in South Dakota, our winters are getting warmer on average, but our summers aren't really getting warmer as much. And so there's this variability in how climate is changing, but on average, the climate is warming. On average, towards the poles, you're getting more warming, and it's happening in different ways. And so we just have to acknowledge that we are on a warming planet. And so we have to think about that with how we look at using our landscape. It's different than it was in the past. But of course, it's climate change, not just global warming. And that, of course, is because it also affects our precipitation. And so this is projected precipitation in 2100, assuming one of the more kind of extreme climate models, the one that we're more on track to moving towards. Anywhere there's the teal colors, that means more precipitation. Anywhere there's the brown colors, that means less precipitation. Anywhere you see the hatching, that means a bunch of climate models tended to agree. So there's more certainty that that's more likely to be what the climate will be. And then it's broken down by winter, spring, summer, and fall. So you can see for this region, we are likely to have wetter winters, wetter springs, maybe drier summers, there's less certainty about that, and then maybe no change in the fall. So when we think about this warming winter, something that's interesting, I grew up around here, and I think we used to have more continuous snow cover in the winter, and I think we've switched. that we probably aren't going to have continuous snow cover in our winters anymore. But that does mean when you get precipitation in the winter, it's different. It will leave our system in ways that it wouldn't if it would have stayed there as snow. If you have more spring precipitation, of course, I think probably most of us can remember the spring of 2019. We had a lot more spring precipitation. That's really challenging for annual row crops. You know, they need particular timing to get into the fields to plant the crops. You need to be able to manage them. And if we're having changing conditions, that might be more challenging. And then on top of both of these maps, what they don't show, with climate change, we're expected to have more extreme weather events. And so more of those 4-inch rains as opposed to 4 1-inch rains nicely spread out. Or, you know, 2019, big flood year. Then we've had drought years after that. You know, so this idea that we're just going to have more variability in our landscape. And so we'll have to think about, okay, you know, what do we do that our conditions are different than they were in the past? But to note that this is a map of from the New York Times and ProPublica put together, but that area that is supposed to look like it's sticking out is the zone that is most suitable for agriculture now in terms of temperature and precipitation. You know, and so you can see farther south of us, it's got more suitable for agriculture. Whereas this is a moderate warming scenario, and you can see that that zone is shifting up. So one of the interesting things with climate change, again, I don't think we should keep having it, you know, go unmitigated. We should try to reduce it if we can. But it is likely that we're likely to have more desirable growing seasons in many ways. So we should recognize that. This was that same map with a more extreme warming scenario. This warming scenario right there is the same one as that was mapped on the precipitation slide. And so it is likely in this region that we will have warmer winters and we will have longer growing seasons. It will also be, you know, changes in our precipitation, and there will be more of these extreme weather events. But so as I've already suggested, I'm critical of the idea that you would use almost all of the landscape to grow 2 summer annual crops. And so, you know, and 2 summer annual crops that mostly don't feed people. And so, so corn and soybean are the 2 crops that we grow around here mostly. Corn is mostly used for ethanol and for livestock feed. And then exports, and then the food part is high fructose corn syrup, and then the residual. And so we have covered our landscape with a crop that we have to manage really intensively and needs very particular spring conditions, but that it doesn't feed people. And soybeans, similarly, there's 2 parts to a soybean seed, and they've got the meal and the oil. We do eat, humans can consume the oil, but the meal almost exclusively goes to animal agriculture. And so this is one where I think when we think about opportunities for our region, you know, we're likely to have warmer growing seasons. We likely will have more precipitation in certain times of the year if we are able to keep that water on the landscape. And so we should think about, could we change what we're doing to have our land use align better with, you know, growing food for people or other values that we might want. Also, with our landscape, I'd like to point out we have huge potential in this region. So this is a map of the United States of soil carbon sequestration potential. As I said, the prairies made amazing soils, tremendous soils. And when you crop them, when you till soil, it gets more air exposed to it, and you have more microbes decomposing the organic matter in the soil, and so you get less soil organic matter. So we had soils that were very rich in organic matter. It can hold a lot of organic matter. We've depleted a lot of it through farming where you do a lot of tillage. And so we have tremendous potential in this region to hold carbon in our soil. And for decades, we will be able to put carbon in our soil, and it will hold it there for hundreds of years, assuming we wouldn't disturb the soil. So when we think about opportunities for the future, and this had a global map with it, and when you look at the United States, we're just really standing out in terms of this capacity that we have, you know, to both mitigate climate change, because this is pulling carbon dioxide out of the air, but it's also income. You know, this is a resource that people now live on land that we have depleted with carbon, that then they can get paid to put the carbon back in the soil. I should also note, here in Sioux Falls, you're kind of at the southern edge of the prairie pothole region of Vermilion. We're a little bit south, but we used to be we are still in the prairie pothole region. We drained most of those wetlands by doing subsurface tile drainage. so that we can move the water off the landscape in the spring so that we can grow corn and soybean. But we could, put those geographically isolated wetlands back on the landscape, and we have tremendous capacity to hold water on our landscape. So when we think about more extreme weather events, wetlands sequester a ton of carbon, and they would be a way of helping make systems less flashy. So we have the potential to do that, should we choose to do it. Moving a little bit still to our land, but to a different way of potentially having opportunities for our land. This is a map of wind energy resources in the United States. And you can see all of South Dakota is colored, and the colors mean the wind power classification, and it goes from fair to superb. In South Dakota, we have a lot of fair and good, some exceptional, and even a teeny bit of outstanding. So this is a tremendous resource that we have in the state. And if we want in the future to do more with wind energy, it is one that, certainly this is not anti-agriculture to have wind energy. This would be an additional opportunity. And it's something that as a state, if we wanted, it's a resource that we have available. This is solar energy resources for the United States. Again, you'll see the Southwest, of course, has a ton of solar energy resources, but it's not to say that we are not without solar energy resources. And we have experts here who are going to talk later about potentials for solar energy. And so to note, we have a lot of wind, we have a lot of sun. These are opportunities for our region that we could think about. So I would summarize this all by saying that I feel like South Dakota has the potential to be food, energy, and if we wanted, material self-sufficient. So right now, our economy is structured more to produce goods, and then we ship them out of the region where they become value added. We could produce a lot of that in the state and use it in the state, which would have a lot of values for our region. I think we also have a lot of potential to contribute to climate change mitigation. So as I said, we have those soils that are a tremendous resource that we could be contributing to, reducing climate change by holding that carbon in our soils for hundreds of years. And I think that, all of this can be better for the economy. And so I did come up from the environmental background, and my reason for going into sustainability was more of the environmentalist perspective. And I think I think there are many people who are like me, and I think that's been to our detriment. I think reframing how we talk about some of this would be really important. That South Dakota has tremendous potential, and we can frame it in ways that don't seem anti-business, making farmers money. That we could do it in ways, I think, that really would be win-wins in a lot of ways, but it's a difference in how we think about it and how we frame it. And so that's what I think you will hear about more today. Thank you. There might be time for a question, but otherwise if there's time for a question, otherwise we might move on. Yes?
So I don't remember the connection to this, but when you have global warming, you actually can have colder temperatures.
Yes.
Like today is really strange and weird, and I'm very crabby about the coldness, but because I know what's coming in January, but I know that just because it's really cold today doesn't mean there isn't global warming.
Yes.
And I
Okay.
think it's like-
Yes, and that's why. Okay, and so I'm not a climate scientist, but I at least didn't know one of the parts is there's the polar vortex. So it's the very cold air around the poles, and before we had as much warming, it holds itself up there. And so that very cold air stays at the poles. Now with this warming, that the forces, the jet streams, I don't know what they are, but they kept the cold air up there are weaker. So it's more likely that you'll get those dips where that very cold air comes down. And so it is, that's why all of this, it's complex. And so it can be hard in talking to people. Yes, sometimes it will get extremely cold. Yes, and even in our summers, it's that our daytime summer temperatures aren't getting warmer, but our nighttime summer temperatures are getting a little warmer. So there is all this complexity that I know can be confusing in talking about it, but I think that is part of the challenge, that then people are like, global warming, look at this, it's freezing. And it's like, okay, the polar vortex, all this complexity built into it that I think it does make it harder to just make kind of these broad statements, which has led to, I think, public's confusion on things.
So we can call it global weird.
Yes, you can call it global weirding. And I think highlighting, they're right, it's the temperature and precipitation changes, and it's the average, but also the intensity, there's these different factors with it. Yeah.
You indicated when we were speaking about wetlands and current practices, something was less flashy.
Oh, yes.
Sorry.
Okay, yes,
Can you just expand on that?
yes, so in the prairie pothole region, so glaciers came by they left about 12,000 years ago. As the glaciers were receding, they scraped up these holes in the landscape, which are these geographically isolated wetlands. So those are wetlands that, I think it's eastern South Dakota, 80% of our wetlands our water bodies would not have been connected to a river. So we just had tremendous capacity for water to sit on the landscape. And so if you can imagine a drought-prone area, but you have all these wetlands, that they're not wet all the time, but they're storing water and they have this capacity to hold it. When you get a 2-inch rain, you have a place for it to stay on the landscape. Right now with subsurface drainage, you have a tube under the ground that, it's functionally lowering the water table so that water can move off more quickly so that you don't get ponding. So it makes sense for growing corn and soybean, but it's moving the water very quickly off the landscape. And so if you're moving into a period where you're likely to have these more extreme events or likely to have more extreme drought, you want to be able to hold your water on the landscape. And it's not that we have to geoengineer this, like we have this, that is in our region. We just have to, functionally break the drainage tiles and then our landscape would hold more water. So yeah, the flashiness is that when you have the drainage tiles, you just have a mechanism to move the water out of our soils very quickly that otherwise you wouldn't have had.
We have time for one more question.
Good, see, I'm not the moderator for this one, I don't have to worry about time, yes.
I think people like you who have been, who have been from a sustainable background, environmental and sustainable, are very important in crafting the next climate communication strategy, because that's very, very important. I was talking to a farmer who just denies there's no climate change because for political reasons. And then we started brainstorming in a language that he understands. And we ended up agreeing on the same thing. He's like, yeah, that's change, that's change, that's change.
Yes.
But I wasn't telling him about climate change, I wasn't telling him about global warming,
Right.
but the nature of communication to suit what the person understands in non-political terms, in non-global sense, has to change. People like you have the capacity to craft an adaptive climate communication strategy to suit the local people here,
Yes.
who are mostly important in the whole scheme of things and who are also affected most. But
Right.
the language, they don't know.
Because it would be, our farmers would be adapting. They are changing their practices. When they have a longer growing season, they are certainly taking advantage of the longer growing season. So it's not as if farmers are not adapting to the conditions, and they're experts in doing that. And I would say, one of the things I would be critical of myself of, and that I'm trying to work on is, how do you frame this in a way that then isn't shaming? And I think that's the real focus, that how do we flip it so it's that there's opportunities. And so I just think, let's say our re-elected governor, there are ways that this could be framed, that this would be very good for South Dakota if we would choose to be a leader. We can sequester carbon. We can make a lot of energy. We could grow high-value food products, but we have to say it in ways like that aren't, no one's trying to make farmers go broke. No one is trying to make business leave the state. That our framing, I think, has to, and mine, I'm trying to work on it, but my inclination coming from the conservation background sometimes hinders me, but I think we really do, and use the language of innovation, use the language of entrepreneurship, because I think it's going to be more effective to many of the audiences. So thank you. Thank you all.
Great, and up next, we have a presentation from Arlene regarding some breaking it down, what's in the Inflation Reduction Act. For those of you who were not here when we first began, Arlene is one of the wonderful people who made today happen. She was one of the driving forces behind making the event today, bringing all our panelists together. Not the feedback. And I will go ahead and pass the microphone over to her.
Thank you, Amber. I wonder if there's a way to make it not quite so hot. Right? Yeah. Hot like a hole. Okay.
Well, thank you so much for, okay. I'm off now?
Now, oh, there we go. Thank you guys so much for turning out. We're gonna keep this on track. We have a jam-packed morning, and I'm gonna get to my point and maybe go a little quicker. And unlike Megan, I need to look at some notes, so forgive me for that. How many of you in the audience are homeowners? You own your own home? Okay, how many are renters? Renters, okay, great. We will talk about what you guys can do. So, breaking it down, what's in the Inflation Reduction Act? Well, I got a lot of help with this. We're going to do an overview of the IRA and other legislation. Kara Hoving did a lot of research. She's sitting down back there. She's small in stature, but mighty in action. Let's just say that, okay? And help from Jim and Jeff and others. So a lot of resources are available from Rewiring America, Canary Media, Bloomberg Philanthropies, and World Resources Institute. Now, we are going to send out a PDF of these slides. So don't feel like you have to take a whole lot of notes, but hopefully you do have an agenda. If anybody did not get an agenda, maybe folks back there could help with that. Raise your hand if you didn't get an agenda. Okay. Keep them up until you get one. Okay, if we should have enough. Okay. So the Inflation Reduction Act, huge bill passed in August, includes $369 billion to combat climate change. And that's not just through tax credits and investments, but rebates and loans and grants. It's expected to create a lot of new jobs by 2030. So we're looking at, within the next 10 years through construction, service, and manufacturing these clean energies. And I'm assuming Hunter and Adam will be hiring some more people, maybe, we don't know. Okay, taking a look at the reductions that we need to happen for emissions, the Inflation Reduction Act has the potential to reduce greenhouse gases by approximately 40% from 2005 levels by 2030. So Inflation Reduction Act will have a reduction on emissions. And that's about 4/5 of the way to our national goal under the Paris Agreement. So it is an effort to combat climate change in US history. Well, we haven't had climate change for that long, so obviously it is. So if you take a look at this graph, oh, I forgot my acronym sheet. There it is. Bob, could you grab my husband Bob is also very helpful. That red bag, there should be a piece of tape in the bottom of that. Yeah. And my handy assistant Bob is going to put this up on the picture. Okay, sorry about that. little details to get done today that we were busy this morning, which is great. So we got the third one over, the American Recovery and Reinvestment Act. That was a huge bill, but now look at the right side. We have the Inflation Reduction Act, IRA. Then we have the CHIPS and Science Act, which is not, don't get confused with chips and salsa. It's CHIPS, which stands for Creating Helpful Incentives to Produce Semiconductors. So it's American manufacturing, basically. So and then there's the IIJA, the Infrastructure and Investment Act. So those three stacked is all helpful in this whole process. So the IRA has about 4 times as much spending for climate as the ARRA, which I didn't put up there, American Recovery and Reinvestment Act. Okay, so looking at what's all in that bill, if you break it down by percentages, the green are the tax credits. The blue are grants, loans, and rebates. So if you look at the green, that's a big chunk of the pie. Since they're tax credits, we need to take advantage of them. They won't get used if people don't use them. You know, it'll sit in the bill and not be used. So that's something that it's going to be a huge effort in the next several years. So just a little bit of philosophy about why we make these changes, and Megan laid out a great plan and a case for what's happening. And maybe some of this is a little opinions, but you can take it for what it's worth. The average household can save $1,800 per year if they do all the things that they can. Install, replace their furnace, put a heat pump in for water heating, convert to an electric vehicle, and use rooftop solar. Whoops, that's not what I wanted to do. Okay. And let's see. So doing all those things would save you $1,800 a year on average, obviously. 42% of energy-related emissions comes from homes. That's the things that we talk about around the kitchen table, the cars, the heat, the things to cook your food. So the only way to remove all those emissions is to have our households run on machines, and machines with plugs, not pipes. So you've heard the phrase, electrify everything, rewiring America. So it's a big shift. The cost of fuel oil is going up, and it's probably, how many of you guys have seen an increase in your heating bill the last, yeah. So, and that can be, just basically, we're talking about the Inflation Reduction Act because the price of fuel is so volatile, it affects inflation. So getting households off that volatility and uncertainty that comes with fossil fuel will certainly drive inflation, and that's the name of the bill. Fossil fuels influence the industry can be a kind of a national security issue. We're kind of beholden to foreign powers like Russia and Saudi Arabia that affect our energy supply, and they can meddle in our democracy. So think of it as a patriotic issue to switch to clean energy. And then we do need to kind of think of a paradigm shift, kind of what Megan was talking about too. How many of you, when I say the word phone, you think of this thing? Right? Well, I grew up, and a lot of you did, with these things. Hello? Oh, and if you were careful, you could listen in on your party line conversation. And then if you dial a number, and if you get off by one number, then you have to start all over again. You can't just backspace like you can now, so. 50 years ago when we used those, we never would have thought of this. And that's, all that thing does is just make phone calls. This does a whole lot more, so. Paradigm shift. Okay, now let's get into the incentives. And what time do I have? Okay, energy efficient home improvement credit. And those numbers that are in the parentheses are the tax code. So that's why I have IRS up there. The Internal Revenue Service is going to be involved in this. That's why they're hiring a whole lot more employees. We get a tax deduction of 30% for the cost of upgrades to those things there. Heat pumps, insulation, upgrading breaker boxes. It's, let's see, limited to $600 per measure. And the upgrade costs can include both equipment and the installation and labor costs. Households can deduct, 30%, and for buying a heat pump or heat pump water heater for their space heating and cooling up to $2,000. And, when I heard the word heat pump, I didn't really know what that's about. So here's just a little schematic of how it works. And I'm sure Chris Johnson, you'll be able to give a few more details on that in the second half of the morning. So there's a heat source heat pump heating cycle, little schematic there, how it works. I know that's maybe kind of tiny. There's a photo of one. And then there's a ground source heat pump, also known as geothermal heat pumps, the ground source or water source. Okay, then there's the new energy efficient home credit, $5,000 to developers that build homes that qualify for the Department of Energy's Zero Energy Ready Homes standard and applies to a wide variety of types of homes. Okay, now we're talking solar panels. I'm sure those guys would like to see Sioux Falls covered in solar panels like that. Residential clean energy credit that renews an existing program that allows households to install solar and to deduct 30% of the cost of the project from their taxes. The credit's guaranteed for 10 years. It's active now and can be taken advantage of right away. So even any project undertaken after January 1st of this year, 2022. And my husband and I thought we better put our money where our mouth is, so we just signed the contract earlier this week. So we're going to be saving money on our bills. Electric vehicles next, but I don't know. Is it going to be his or mine? Okay, then we have High Efficiency Electric Home Rebate Act, the HERA. That's over there, I think. $4.5 billion for low and moderate income households. And these are going to be rebates, which will not likely be available until the second half of 2023 because they're rolled out through the state's Department of Energy. So that will flow down. That's something that we're going to need to be watching. The rebates programs are for those income levels. So let's see, low to moderate income, or no, low income is, what was that again, Tara? I'm saying this wrong. 80% of the area median income, and moderate income is 80 to 150% of area median income. And within that HERA, there's all the items that you can take advantage of based on your income qualifications. And those items can be stacked for the household cap of $14,000. Okay, it's another acronym. homeowner and occupant monetary encouragement and stability. Otherwise, it's a lot easier to say homes rebates. It rewards energy efficient retrofits, and those are based on models. And that's a little more nebulous, I think, and not as much information is available there, but a tiered system, like if you have more of an impact, you get a little more money in that rebate. Okay, now we're talking Ian's focus here. Ian, is it Kumaro? Kumaro, okay. Electric vehicle credit, and he'll be talking more about this. $7,500 for a new vehicle. That's a tax code, a tax break. And then the used vehicle is $44,000. So it helps to get, having that used vehicle incentive in there helps to get the new vehicles back into the market and circulating. So Casey, when you want to upgrade, I'll buy your Nissan Leaf from you then. Okay? Then I'll get my 4,000. Okay. Okay, moving on. Hey, we're doing pretty good. Catching us up here. Resources. Now, you don't need to take a picture of this QR code right now, but it will bring you to this Rewiring America IRA savings calculator. So it shows potential savings based on your zip code. And there's a screenshot of a sample that was done, so you can kind of see how that works. Let's see, there's lots of different explainers in that Rewiring America site. And then there's the White House Clean Energy for All updates on the program rollout. So you can go to that site, put in your email address and get updates. Okay, there are a lot of tools available for municipalities and states and local governments, tribal entities. So this is a tool, the FOLD tool, Federal Funding Opportunities for Local Decarbonization. Instead of searching all of these different grants, it helps you to narrow down your focus into just what would apply for your particular situation or municipality. So it helps leverage those existing federal fundings, the block grants, technical assistance, et cetera. And there are $5 billion in grants for cities and states to adopt their greenhouse gas emission reduction plans and to implement them. And there's also workforce development assistance plans available to, how are we going to implement this? We need people. So that will help that issue. Workforce development to help states so they could retrofit homes. And then guides for electrifying vehicles, how the guide works, and then the list of vehicles. Okay, so I think, Amber, we're keeping on track here pretty well. There are, as you can see, opportunities abound in this region and in the nation. And SODAC 350 wants to be a player. We want to help. We're just grassroots people trying to make a difference. So as you can see up there and on our banner, we're building a movement. We're trying to promote solutions, creating coalitions with lots of good folks here, and hope to keep moving forward. So any questions, folks? Andreen?
Yeah, I read about electric vehicles. I've seen charging stations for Tesla by Hy-Vee on Marion Road. Do those work on other electric cars? And are there charging stations for any other kind of electric cars? I live in an apartment
Okay.
with underground parking. There's no way I could
Right.
do anything there.
I can handle all that.
Okay,
Yeah, I'll be doing all the.
Ian will be telling you all about that. Good save. Thank you.
Is anybody gonna talk about any other things for renters?
Yeah, I mean, the vehicles, electric appliances. Did I
Well,
Did I
those
show
are
that?
owned by the people that run it.
Small excerpt, but I mean, in terms of just electrifying for renters, I mean, these are, the landlords that own these buildings should qualify for some of these incentives if they want to install charging stations, and it wouldn't be hard for them to acquire if they want to. So, I mean, they have the money here that's available to them, so hopefully more people will be looking at that. And that's, that's what we hope.
Okay, I'll wait.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, Ian just said more, there should be money for landlords to make these improvements. So renters need to be saying, hey, watch out, be looking for that.
Lobby together.
Lobby, yes. Question?
For the EFL, do you know, and you might not, what Sioux Falls is looking at for their entities to be utilizing that rebate and the grants?
You're talking about the full tool that?
Yeah.
Yeah, sure, that looking at, I know they're working hard on that. There's staff that are working on looking at what grants and rebates and loans and things. So, and one big part of that is getting that, I think Amber mentioned the Sustainable Sioux Falls Plan. So just, getting input on that so that we can, all of us here maybe can talk to our city councilors, our representatives, and say, hey, we want to move forward with this. Try to work out the bugs and get it done so that we can take advantage of things. So, first back there and then here.
If I buy solar panels and I get 30% off my taxes on that, and then I buy a car, that may take down my tax. Can I roll that stuff over to the next year too, the credits for the car?
Bob, you're asking too hard questions.
Consult your
Tax credits? Yeah, that's the answer. Consult your tax professional.
The answer.
Okay, Sharon?
So my question is, I'm hearing, one of the pieces that struck me in here was the workforce development piece.
Yes.
And that's something we talk about a lot in this state. Is that something that can be addressed by the upcoming legislature? Or is it gonna have to be after that? Or is it something that's in more of the executive responsible for doing that?
Okay. I would say the legislature should be looking at this. Yeah, some of these, the rules and things are kind of slow to come out. This is the federal government, but,
So that's an opportunity for us to speak up then in these
Right.
coming months prior to session
yes.
and during session too. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, that's a great point, Sharon, that we need to speak up and talk to our legislators to be looking at these things. Is there another?
Did you say this would be sent to the email that we?
Yes.
That's awesome.
Yes, so make sure we have your email and then we can read it. Sometimes it's like, dot, what? I can't remember. So you know what I mean. So I better keep moving. We need to have a break. And one more thing I was going to say, if you have children or grandchildren that are wondering, what should I do with my life and career? We need HVAC technicians, we'll need electricians, tax professionals, all those things. You can see the funding that's there that needs to support all these things. So anyway, one last question.
I have a question of all questions. You said the incentives would go for 10 years. That doesn't mean I get a tax credit for 10 years in a row, correct?
I don't think so. I think it's available, so it's not.
It's not for every year, it's like you
Yeah.
for the year.
I mean, if you decide to do this in 2026 or whatever.
You got 10 years to do it.
Continue to do it.
So each year for 10 years, whatever you use, say if you do something in 2023, use a portion of that in 2023, it will roll over for 10 years. So if you utilize it in the first year, then it's out. But anything purchased on an annual basis, you get 30% every single year. So it's not a one-time thing. It's something that, so if you get an $18,000 credit in 2023, if you don't use all of it in 2023, you can utilize that rolled over until 2034 or whatever it is. So,
Okay, so Sodak compost is here, and the plates and cups, some of them at least, are compostable. So if you're throwing away your plates and your cup and your napkin, I think there is Bob has a silver bag there, and we'll maybe put it over there by Morgan. And what time should we be back here?
So we're trying to keep back on schedule. We got started a little bit late. We'll start at 11:05.
11:05, so you got 10 minutes, we'll be back in our chairs at 11:05. Now we got cookies.
Yay!
Just a logistics question. Carson said 2 hours. Not on weekdays. I mean, not on Saturdays. It's all.
Because we're both awesome.
Tuesday, you know about her women's action. Hi, Irene. So anyways, but yeah, no, that's awesome. I don't know her, but
Hi, Arlene.
Hi.
You talked about needing HVAC people.
Yeah.
Well, I happen to know somebody
That
who
is
does
awesome.
HVAC.
I love her so much.
I don't know her.
She's
First, I got to use this
She
here.
used to be the head of Thrive. Thrive, the group that does they've done stuff with like childhood, school hunger, stuff in town. They worked with Augustana research a lot to get some of those, nail those numbers down. And they actually have had a training. I don't know if they're still running it before she retired, just for training and running meetings and stuff. But she is fantastic. She's so fun. She's got a very dry sense of humor. I love her to death. So yeah, that's awesome.
It seems like there's a lot of groups that are doing a lot of overlap, and I'm thinking if we can at least keep sharing what we're all doing so we can support each other, because, you know, our
Let me catch you when I got this done.
But,
Okay?
you know, if they even talked about talking to our regional guy, Scott out in Minneapolis, and saying, if the other people could start one too, because, you know, I thought if we changed our meetings to the evening, we might gain young people, but we lose all of us old people who don't like to drive at night.
Right.
You know, it's that kind
Right,
of thing.
right.
But, you know, maybe we could
No.
get a sister organization
Yes,
going.
great minds think alike. I mean, we're thinking about a lot of the same things. So I like where you're going. I like where you're thinking with this.
And I know that sometimes we're overlapping, but as long as we're supporting each other, I mean, I think that's like we're a nonpartisan group, really, but there's no social justice warriors.
Right, I know.
Yeah, but the other side's going for voter suppression.
Yeah.
You know, that's why I'm trouble when I'm at a table.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah, I know. That's tough. I have that same problem. And I'm not very good at keeping a poker face in some of those situations, so I'm like working on my micro expressions.
Well, that's the thing about it.
I know, it helps a little. So yeah, Kevin, I'm 100% where you're at with the networking and the coalition. I mean, you've got you don't have to turn your head around. You've got all these groups, and they're all aimed in the same direction, but then we're not necessarily growing together, and we're duplicating efforts.
Like I had somebody told me, oh, you've got to sign up, Jeannie, and I'm like, you know, we're going to hand it to you. That's how our kids work.
Right.
Sign up for these two blocks of time. Why do you sign up, Jeannie? I'm not going to get any
Right.
because they're not going to go home.
Right.
Of course, with that.
Right. It's knowing the demographics, but still reaching connections, because I think that's where you and I showing up at all these things. But I know, but you know what I mean. I mean, we need to maintain those that at least the awareness, and I don't know, that's one thing that I like that
Well,
Sodak.
you're on our mailing list.
Yeah.
And I'm on Kodak.
Yeah, yeah.
When voters mailing,
Yeah, right. But that's one thing that, at least on climate and environmental and that sort of thing, so that 350, I think they're trying to be, umbrella isn't maybe the right word, but they're trying to make sure that everybody in that area has the information for all the groups that are in the area because it's so disparate.
Well, I'm also working, I tried it with the rural action too for a while, and I realized that's not, I'm supportive of it, but I don't really.
Yeah, I wanna see.
Right.
Like,
So I,
there's
there's
two
other
ways
groups
you
that
can have
are,
your
and
second
they're out there
display.
for rural, smart,
Right.
trying to
Yeah, so
fight
you might be able to,
you know,
right,
like-
the two ways you
Right.
can do this. Probably the
Yeah.
easiest way.
So no, oh, that's, I'm really,
But-
I'm excited to hear how your conversation with Sandy goes because,
Yeah, yeah.
so she doesn't have it up and rolling yet, she's just kind of talking about
I'm
it.
not sure, I just, Tiffany Campbell connected me and said let's get together properly, so Joan and I and I'm not sure if Tiffany's there or not.
There's
but we're
one mode where you can mirror.
Super excited to hear what comes out of that.
But I'm not impressed by the individual people at the national level.
Maybe scroll
That
down.
truly brigade, they really brought shit done on it, electoral, in certain areas, you know, so, and it's visible, it's really showing a lot of good graphics and videos that they let everybody, you know, it's
Yeah,
free, you know, you just gotta know how to access it. So I just.
Yep.
I
So
just
now,
got-
whatever you see on your screen,
starting
they
to
see.
realize that.
So now if you bring that up, it's gonna show in this. Oh, is this a PowerPoint presentation as well?
No, I think we're just trying to get rolling again.
Yeah.
I don't know, you know, start up stuff, and I don't know how.
Go on the
Follow through. You know, when you write a letter, somebody write a letter, you know, we've got over 100 people on our mailing list, and I don't know how many are doing stuff.
You know, that's a good question. How do we measure results?
We did a survey, but
exact same thing.
for response rate.
She's not gonna
Yeah,
see
yeah.
it.
And it's not what you come to our meeting.
Yeah.
That'll-
But what about the other agencies? Oh, the mailing.
Right, right. It'd be nice if we could have a way of, I mean, I know there's other ways, you know, other organizations or national organizations that have, you know, you can do an online form, which isn't gonna work again for every demographic, right? Yeah.
Later I got to, I should have made a much shorter, simpler, maybe I would have gotten better.
Yeah, yeah. Well, that's how you learn though. You know,
And
you
I
see how it
went
works.
to write the legislators, and I always send my letters, probably to Joan, so she can laugh about it. But I said, does anybody else know what they've written? And maybe we can ask our group to say, just if you've written a letter, either share it or just tell us that you did.
Yes, 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 yes. I think that's an excellent idea, just to start getting a handle
Well, I
on it.
looked at how that campground they were gonna put in Custer Park, and like
Yeah.
1,000 people wrote in, and one guy said, I had 1,000 against and only one for, how could I?
Right.
How could I not?
Right.
Value them with
Yep.
stuff, I mean, those women's issues are, I think they're gonna go after sexual style crap.
Oh, undoubtedly,
Bounty.
undoubtedly.
At least Howard already tried to go after police control, I mean.
Yep.
You know, so they're previous control, they tried to make it worse, more difficult, and I yell at them every year on that, and here it's supposed to get conversation. They're trying to make irreconcilable differences not be allowed for.
right.
You gotta prove you've beaten up or you've drunk.
Right. Oh my God. Oh, that's Old Testament right there.
Yeah, but it gets closer every year. Of course, Christian started it, but it was some other outfit that sponsored the last year. I suppose Christian got too much pushback, you know, right there. You need them in the group to go show, you're stuck with them, but, So yeah, we watch a lot of it. That's hard. There's so much going on, so fast.
Yep. That's something I wish if I had nothing else to do, that I could just do nothing but
So
watch.
that's pretty much all I have. I'm a little old retiree this winter.
Lucky.
I now have a keyboard, a ukulele, and I'm new knitting, but I'm psyched about it, you know.
Yeah.
I have time to.
Yeah.
But it is weird, but I've never been in such a state where it's so small that you can't have it.
Right.
Right.
So that's right. Yeah. Okay. Let me know how that goes with Candy.
Yeah, let's do coffee sometime.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, for sure.
You have
Testing. 2-minute warning. We got 2 minutes, then we'll take our seats. Okay, it's 11:05 and next thing is drawings. Hopefully if you brought your mug and water bottle, you got your either green or red tickets. Come on up here, you guys, and bring those items. Oh, and the panelists can start making your way up here. You're kind of gonna be standing.
Do you want to do green first?
Well, so I'm not, just keeping us fresh, people.
Okay, we got Megan, Stacy, Chris, Ian, Hunter, and Adam. Might have a little, Ian, you want to bring another chair up here?
Yeah.
Okay.
Drum roll, green water bottle first.
Kevin Elsinger.
Me.
Kevin gets that one, and you get your Thrivent t-shirt. Did we say Thrivent gave $250 towards this event?
Sweet.
And a gift card to
Pomegranate Market.
Pomegranate Market, and another water bottle.
Another water bottle and a t-shirt.
And
Sharon will be happy I got another t-shirt.
if you
Live
We have
generously.
plenty of sizes available.
Okay.
back there. Swap it out.
Do I get the basket too?
Sure, get the basket too.
Wow.
Drum roll.
Roseanne Hoffman.
Roseanne Hoffman, she got her own mug. We got a mug from the Breaks and a $10 gift card to Daily Clean Food and Drink, another t-shirt, and water.
And if you put down your email, if you signed in at the beginning, we'll have the big basket with the big door prize at the end after the panel.
Stay for the end. Hand it back over to Amber.
You're gonna get so sick of hearing my voice today. Well, that's okay. You only have to hear it for one day, right? Thank you all for coming back. I know it's always kind of a struggle after you've had an opportunity to have a snack, to sit down and listen to me speak, but thankfully you all stuck around because you have the opportunity to hear these wonderful individuals and all that they have to offer for our panel. And again, just as you're cleaning up, a reminder that food waste, we do have designated bins for that, so please keep that in mind as you are sorting through and clearing off your area. Congratulations to our prize winners, and again, as Kara said, if you haven't had an opportunity to put your email in and be considered for the large prize, there is still an opportunity for one more door prize, so be sure to take advantage of that. Next on our agenda, we'll be hearing from our panel on green technologies. They'll each have 5 to 10 minutes to address you in a moment, but in the meantime, I'm excited for the opportunity to address you to our incredible panelists. Beginning with Stacy McMahon. Stacy has been a cook with Cook Hazard for over 25 years and is currently a principal architect and director of design operations. Her work can be seen all over Sioux Falls as well as on state projects. Projects range from the Sharapa Place building, Raven Industries, Museum of Visual Materials, and all of these have LEED Green Building certifications. And so in case you haven't noticed, I actually run a local certification, green business certification program. So hearing that we have some LEED projects in the area makes me very, very happy. They also include the National Music Museums and the new Children's Inn and various campus buildings and master plans. She's a member of the American Institute of Architects, the U.S. Green Building Council, and has served as a fellow with Architecture for Humanity in Haiti. Next is Chris Johnson. Chris started Johnson Environmental in 2008 with the vision of helping homeowners and companies build greener. Chris has spent most of his career in the residential construction industry. His company specializes in affordable construction, consulting, and building performance, and modeling, testing, and rating. Johnson Environmental conducts home energy rating systems, HERS ratings, for new constructions. HERS ratings evaluate walls, ceilings, roofs, windows, doors, HVAC systems, and water heating systems. Chris will explain why energy codes were created and why they make sense. Next, we have a pair of experts on solar technology, Hunter Clannon and Adam Fisher. Hunter has a very unique story leading to residing in Sioux Falls. Recently moving from Tampa, Florida, where he focused on the development of solar energy in the South. Hunter is stationed in Harrisburg with the love of his life, Paige, and their 3-month-old daughter, Sawyer. Hunter's hobbies include developing young athletes, hiking and kayaking, and most importantly, spending as much time with his family as possible. A minor league baseball player with a large passion for solar energy and its benefits, Hunter has come to Sioux Falls and Wagner with a goal in mind, to change the perception of solar energy in the North and to help others take advantage of its benefits, as well as help the world to change the way we produce and consume energy by using sustainable, renewable resources. And Adam was born and raised in Sioux Falls and has always called South Dakota home. While attending the University of South Dakota, he met the love of his life, Amanda. They have 2 beautiful children, Austin, who's 12, and Adeline, who's 11. Both are extremely busy with sports, church, and all other activities. Adam's interests include spending time with family and friends, the outdoors, coaching youth sports, and cheering on the Minnesota Vikings, Nebraska Cornhuskers, Duke Blue Devils, and Minnesota Twins.
You have a very, very active sports player. Adam takes immense pride in growing the Wagner name in the community and has seized every moment since the doors officially opened in January 2022. And finally, Ian Cameron?
Coverall.
I apologize.
That's all good.
Ian has been a certified Mason consultant for 10 years with Billion Automotive, and he specializes in electric vehicles as well as many other brands that Billion Automotive carries. Servicing the Sioux Falls area for his entire career, he's happy to help with any of your vehicle needs, both new and used, with any brand that Billion Automotive carries. And again, moderating will be Dr. Megan Jarko, who you heard from earlier today. So please welcome this incredible team.
It's nice to see such a room full of people, so thanks for coming out on this cold morning. I'll spend about, I don't know, maybe 10 minutes just talking about a little bit of our work and about green building. Is there a presentation? Technology again. There's a couple boards back here at the table I'm at that shows some of the Sioux Falls projects that have the leadership in energy and environmental design certification to them. Some are Energy Star certified, worked with Chris Johnson on a number of projects. This one is an affordable housing project and it's Energy Star 3 certified, so it's, oh, sure. Nice to have that at the affordable housing level for sure.
Where is it?
That's at the corner of 10th and Summit, I think. Yeah, there are eight units in there, mostly veteran occupied, and their turnover is really low, so that's encouraging to a designer to have that happen. But in general, buildings constitute or use roughly 40% of all U.S. energy. So it's an incredible field for, has a lot of opportunity for making a big difference if you lower their energy use. So that's mostly what I'm going to talk about. Because they also have about 40% of the associated greenhouse gas emissions with them. So what can we do? We heard a lot about the Inflation Reduction Act. Yeah, so there's a lot contained in that, and we can all do something within our homes. Retrofit for greater insulative values, for example, purchase the appliance, switch over to electric instead of gas, use less gas when you have it. And then photovoltaics, the solar panels are becoming so much more affordable. So find out what those are, plan, and take advantage of them. And they are now put in place until 2032. In the recent past, it's been like almost year upon year where we're not sure whether they're going to stay with us, but now they are for the next 10 years. And so there are also local energy incentives, so you need to find out what those are and also take advantage of those. These are some rebate programs from the city of Sioux Falls, and I just got this from their website, so you can easily find that through a Google search. Let the city know that you care about emissions. Take part in the planning for the sustainability plan that they have going on right now. There's a lot of public hearings. I just attended one this past week here in this room. Holly Meyer is here, the city sustainability director. She's a great resource. The city codes for insulation values need to be updated. I'll go into that just in a little bit. In this, it's not right, I don't think, because those higher utility costs are passed on to people who can't necessarily afford them. So it's an equity issue. So just a little bit about that. We're at the 2009 level for the energy codes and those insulated values. This is for from the 2021 amended codes. This, I got this off of the city website, so you can see how those values are being changed from the international code. And then this is the 2021 code, and you can find these all on the internet. You just Google search international building code or the International Energy Conservation Code, and you can find these tables, but there's just a little bit of a comparison. Right now, we're at 49R for ceilings, and the 2021 code has an additional 30R. So we're missing, at the roof level, we're missing that 30R of insulation by code. So it's easy to do the minimum because it costs a little more, but it saves money over time. And then the walls are also behind, but not as badly as the roof plane. So you can also learn about green building frameworks, find out what's in them, and apply them to any projects that you have. You don't necessarily have to do a certification, but there's a lot of ideas contained in these frameworks, and they're all discoverable online. So you just have to do a little research and reading about them. Support local businesses that practice green. There's examples up here. And then develop your own personal philosophy and practice that. Oh, yeah.
Well, we're gonna leave that building up there, because that's one that we did work on together, through Sioux Falls Affordable Housing. And, you know, for perspective, like this building that has a central water heating system that heats in the floors. And so it's all radiant heat, and these mini splits for cooling. And one thing that we do, like Johnson Environmental and myself, is we do these HERS scores. And everybody's heard of net zero, raise your hand, you ever all heard of it. Well, a HERS score was developed back in 2006 to come up with that terminology. It never existed before that, essentially. And so when we put our, like this house or any building into a model, it comes up and it tells it exactly where it fits. So typically our South Dakota house is about 130. Code today should be about 60 to 50. This project here turned in about 36. With solar, you know, just a couple watts of solar, we're gonna drop it down to the teens really fast. So it's just one of those really neat designs. They're one-bedroom studios, essentially. It's like a longer design. I think last year we averaged a little under, it was like $28 to $30 a month utility costs for everything. Heating, cooling, electricity, plug loads. That in comparison, we have units that, we work for the utility companies when they have problem buildings. We have one-bedroom units here in Sioux Falls that are over $300 a month in the wintertime with constant turnovers and for renters. So that's some of the things that we work with, and we're always excited to work with green programs and figuring this stuff out. We also did, I don't know if any, raise your hand if you ever heard of Copper Pass Apartments here in town. They're over on the, yep. We certified that one and did pass some certification through Costello Properties and Blackwing. That were the builders on that one. And that's just another one of those really kind of neat design, neat test case. One of those processes where you get to live and, you know, develop and build something like that here in South Dakota, figure out what's good or what's bad, or how can we make it better next time. There's tons of great builders here in this town. There's actually a building right over here by the Waits Construction did it, Irving, where they took down the old Irving Elementary School. That one has solar. It's built the Department of Energy Net Zero Ready program. It came in right around a 40 HERS score. But the things that we really gotta, you know, why I'm here today and why kind of the 350 pretty neat organization is we want to look at things like, kind of going back to what Megan started, is how, what things locally can incentivize this. We have a plaque over there that I kind of bring around. We just got done with South Dakota Housing meetings last week, the Housing Authority, and it has carbon on it. And they're like, what are you talking about? Who cares about carbon? But I have a plaque right next to it that says utility savings. And everybody's taking pictures of the utility savings, and no one could understand what carbon savings was. So we have to really watch how we talk to people and figure out what's their incentive and why they're doing it. part of the Inflation Reduction Act is South Dakota, we need a Department of Power. Currently, we really don't have anything in charge like that, or Department of Energy would be. We have the Public Utility Commission, but that has to be developed, and that's how a lot of these residential programs are gonna get rolled out. During the last rollout, it kind of went through the ICAP here in South Dakota, so it went to just basically one organization, and they handled all the people applying for it. But this was a lot larger, so there's a lot more opportunities there for everybody to use it. Another thing that we really should be working on as a community and the counties is the PACE, PACE funding. And it's kind of a tax tip essentially, but for building efficiency. Right now, it's really hard for a builder to compete with another construction company building apartments because there is no code for apartments in South Dakota. So you can have one person doing $120,000 unit and another one doing $180,000 unit. And they have to compete for the same funding, the same investors. And a lot of investors like, the more money they can make, the better it is. With PACE, what they can do is they get funded, and it's a third-party organization. The state has already passed it. Now it's down to the counties that have to okay it. And it's usually a percentage of the savings over code. So if a building wanted to be built here, we just did one in Wisconsin, I'll use as an example, it's 260 units. They received $9 million in down payment assistance to get it built. And that gets paid back through the taxes, the property taxes. So it's a sizable amount for developers. They can actually pay attention to it. And that building went from a code minimum design to solar net zero, and about to produce more power than it uses. It's a carbon positive construction also. So the developers are really green and trying to figure all this stuff out. So you get a lot better buildings when there's more incentives locally. And that's that part of that PACE. The next thing is more for like homeowners here, is we really have to roll out and figure out a city map essentially for, a lot of people are talking about buying electric cars, and how many houses in the city and how many neighborhoods can't have electric cars just because of the average going in. My old house, we replaced the old 100 amp and we went to a 600 amp service. And apartments like to have 800 amp. But even at 600, it'd be hard to go all electric with 2 electric cars. So that's gonna be the next biggest hurdle, kind of like that phone call, the phone to the cell phone. It's gonna have probably start being on your MLS sheets, some of that added to it. Is this house available for electric car charging? It might not be. Same with just the heating and the heat pumps and all that. So there's always lots of challenges, lots of good, cool things going on. Master metering is another one that we'd love to see okay to the Department of Energy for all apartment builders. That's something that, right now, like an apartment builder, the more they save the client on energy really isn't an incentive. But with master metering, it could be an incentive. That way, you just pay one bill as a renter. We have a few of those buildings in place around the state. They're doing really well. The owners love them. The renters love them. The people that are in there love them. There's one in Rapid City that your internet, everything's provided under one check. So it's a really simple, easy way for renters to have that. But I guess that's a lot of stuff. I will pass it down to the next.
I need to interrupt just for 1 second.
Oh, yeah.
I had security just have a request for the owner of a red Ford F-150, plate number 1247S1 or 7E1, I can't read handwriting. But they just need to see security quickly just to address an issue with the vehicle. So if you can, if that is your vehicle, please see security at the front desk. Sorry for that.
All right, tax credits. There's a lot of stuff here. The main purpose of me attending today is to discuss specifically the changes that are coming with the Inflation Reduction Act that has been passed. So I'm just gonna get right into it. There's gonna be Q&A at the end of this, it looks like. So I imagine you guys are gonna have a lot of questions. There's a lot of stuff in this subject, but I'm just gonna touch on the major changes. So The main thing they've done, and if you guys, quick show of hands, who knows what the tax credit is currently, or was? Everyone? Oh, wow, okay, so up until this point, the tax credit was actually $7,500 for qualifying EV and plug-in hybrid vehicles. So what that basically means is, up until these changes, there was a very large list of vehicles that qualified for the $7,500 tax credit. And so basically what's happened, thank you, is they've changed the requirement for vehicles qualified. Now there's two big changes. Let me give you the good news first. The good news is that companies like Tesla and General Motors hit their cap of 200,000 vehicles sold in the United States probably about a year and a half ago. And so for the last year, even though this $7,500 credit money is still available, those are vehicles. Let me give you a specific example. Chevrolet Bolt, which is an all-electric vehicle that no longer qualified for that $7,500 tax credit. So basically, the people that are saving the most money are the ones that are taking advantage of these credits, because these credits, as I've been saying for years, are not going to be available forever. There's a cap, or there was. So the good news is that they are removing the cap. So as of January 1st, 2023, if you want to buy a Chevrolet Bolt, for example, that vehicle will now qualify for the $7,500 tax credit. Here's the bad news for you. If you were looking at some specific vehicles, I'll give you the Kia Niro. That does not meet the new standards for what the government is providing these tax credits for. The specific standards are two parts. The first part, the vehicles to qualify, they have to have something called critical minerals, minimum percent value sourced in the United States. So in layman's terms, the batteries that are going in those cars, they want in the year of 2023, 40% of that battery to be sourced and built in the United States. If that is not the case, that car does not qualify, okay? The second part, they must have final assembly in North America as of August 17, 2022. Full effect goes on January 1st, 2023. What does that mean? Well, the Kia, and I'll give you, for my brand, my specialty is Nissan, the Nissan Ariya. That is not built or final assembly place is not in the United States, it's in Japan. So even though that is an electric car, electric SUV, which I'm still very excited about, that vehicle will not meet the requirements to qualify for the $7,500 tax credit, okay? So those are the two new requirements they're putting on there in terms of building the car. The other changes are designed to make electric tax credits available to folks that are not making $300,000 a year, let's put it that way. So they put a couple of stipulations on the program. In addition to where they're built and final assembly points are, vans, sport utilities, and pickup trucks to qualify must be under 80,000 MSRP. It's high enough anyway, right? Everything else max MSRP, 55,000. So if you're looking at the luxury Porsche Cayman, $150,000 full electric car, and you want to go 0 to 60 in 1.8 seconds, you can afford it. Sorry, you don't get the tax credit. Okay, so they're removing those high-end luxury cars from the limits. The other qualification that they're changing is the income. So your MAGI, modified adjusted gross income, must be under 300,000 for joint filers, 225K for head of household, and $150,000 for single filers. Okay, that will qualify you for the full $7,500 tax credit on the car if the car meets all other government regulations. Now, one thing that I think Arlene kind of mentioned, the one thing that I'm kind of really excited for is the used car tax credit that is going to be coming into effect as of January 1st, 2023. Now, of course, it's government, so I'm not just going to give you this money, right? There's stipulations. To qualify for the used vehicle tax credit, the price of that vehicle has to be $25,000 or less. 4K or 30%, whichever value is lower is the value that they're going to go with. So if you're buying a car at, I think if I did the math, it's like 20 grand, you're still going to get the full $4,000 off that price as a tax credit at the end of the year. The vehicle must also be at least 2 years old And Arlene, I'm very sorry, but it has to be bought by the dealership, from a dealership. Yeah, I know. Hey, you just call me, there's ways around that, it's called an in and out deal. I'll make that happen. You guys heard the price, I'll handle everything else, okay? That's fine. The limits on the used car tax credit is also here for income, so they want you to have, 75K for single filers, 112,500 for the household, $150,000 for joint filers. As long as you're under those requirements, you'll qualify for the used car tax credit, okay? That is, in a nutshell, everything that is changing going forward. And if you guys do have questions during the Q&A, I do have a full list of also vehicles here that will qualify for those tax credits. So if you've got your eye on one, I've got the list right here, quick question, or come find me and I can help answer those questions. So that's all I got for now. Yeah.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Adam Fisher. I'm the Sioux Falls president of the branch of Wagner Roofing and Solar. Beside me is Hunter Clannon. He is our solar specialist in-house here in Sioux Falls. Because we're newer in town, I wanted to take just a quick minute, a couple minutes to tell you about who is Wagner Roofing and Solar. Wagner Roofing and Solar has been a namesake in the construction industry for the past 12 years in Billings, Montana. The Wagner family started with humble beginnings, but quickly established themselves in Billings as an honest and reputable company. The last 5 years, Wagner shifted their focus to exterior and storm restoration and most recently solar power. With this renewed focus, Wagner has been able to establish branches in Rapid City, Williston, North Dakota, Sioux Falls, Spearfish, Des Moines, and most recently Bismarck. Wagner Roofing and Solar is an elite contracting company with the prestigious title Platinum Preferred Contractor, which is only achieved by less than 1% of contractors across the nation. With 7 branches and over 1,000 5-star Google reviews as a company, Wagner Roofing and Solar as a whole is not only a top growing contractor, but considered by many the highest rated roofing, siding, and solar contractor in the upper Midwest. As an experienced team, Wagner provides only the best in product quality, selection in the community, product quality and selection to the community, which enables us to consistently exceed our mission statement. It's simple but profound to bless a lot of families. Wagner Roofing and Solar takes immense pride in achieving the mission through education, empowerment, and partnership with every interaction in our community. There are many roofing and siding companies in Sioux Falls and the surrounding area, but none like Wagner Roofing and Solar. We're the only Sioux Falls contractor to offer roofing, siding, and solar to the community. Since January 3, we opened our doors in Sioux Falls, and our 120 5-star Google reviews since then have illustrated how the team actively listens to both home and business owners and educates them to make empowered decisions to meet their own specific needs. We partner with our clients and present to them the long-term benefits of the products we provide. The heart of Wagner Roofing and Solar is to bless every person we meet. When our neighbors are blessed, our communities thrive, and when our communities thrive, we all win. We intend to change the Sioux Falls landscape by creating immense opportunity for home and business owners, coupled with life-changing employment opportunities for those who join our team. Our solar arrays create financial stability in a chaotic world through consistent cost and reliable performance. Our lengthy roof warranties give families peace of mind that the place where they make their memories are protected. Our prompt communication, passionate advocacy for our clients, and unrivaled customer service are the vehicles in which we drive positive change in our community. Why are we passionate about quality roofs, siding, and solar power? Because these products protect homes, enhance our businesses, and give individuals greater financial independence. That's how we bless others, and if we're not blessing others, we're just not working. So I'm going to pass the mic over to Hunter here to do why you guys are all here to learn about solar power.
What's going on, guys? Thanks everyone for coming. To be honest, when it comes to solar, it's a very new concept, specifically in South Dakota. A lot of people have a lot of questions. I know Q&A is kind of, we're going into Q&A here in a minute. But when it comes to solar, everyone, if you're here, everyone knows how solar works to an extent from a simple standpoint. So I want you guys to run this. I want anything that's coming up to your guys' minds, anything that's going on, kind of want to start Q&A when it comes to solar for you guys. If there's anything that comes up, if anybody has any questions, feel free to raise your hand. We've got to just move on. So when it comes to specifically the solar tax credit, it's a 10-year program. She kind of touched on it a little bit. Retrofit back to January 1st. Any solar purchase that has anything to do with whether it's tree removal, getting a new roof, changing out a water heater, which I just found out, we talked about earlier. Anything that's coupled in that process, you get 30% on, and that's as a tax credit. So you will not receive, it's not a rebate and it's not a deduction, but it's a tax credit that will be utilized over a 10-year period. I answered that question a little bit earlier. Over a 10-year period, anything that's needed or used can be utilized over that 10-year period. Say in 2023, you have the ability to transition into solar. You get a little bit, you have to do a roof or you have some trees removed. That's all going to be coupled. The moment 2024 starts, any addition, any progress that has to be done when it comes to solar, you can utilize that the next year. One of the main things that we wanted to touch up on, because Johnson Environmental, they kind of touched up on it a little bit when it comes to the utility costs. South Dakota is one of the main and only states out of our surrounding states that doesn't utilize or regulate what's called net metering. Net metering is basically your ability to produce energy on your own and sell it back to utility companies at the same rate that they sell it to you for. Right now, it's kind of up to each utility company. On average, just because they're the two closest ones, Sioux Valley and Xcel Energy. Xcel is, let's say, on average, depending on whether you're on a budgeted plan or not, it's 11 cents to 14 cents per kilowatt is what's charged. When you overproduce and send it back to the grid, they only purchase it at about 2 to 3% or 2 to 3 cents per kilowatt. We understand why they do that, because rates as a whole would raise if they were to jump on the board with how Minnesota and Montana and some of these other states are. But if energy is produced and it's given to the grid and it's spread out throughout, something we talked about a little bit earlier, one thing that's not realized is the fact that if we all work together, whether they're Xcel, a big company like Xcel, or one of the main ones down south was Duke Energy, those they're not monopolies, but those semi-monopolies that kind of have control over everyone's electric and everyone's energy. What a lot of people don't realize is if we work together in that aspect, everyone would benefit instead of, hey, let's monopolize the energy, and they don't want to run away from the fossil fuels and run away from the electric that they're producing now. What's not realized is if some of these companies, I don't know, this is something that came up a while ago, but Elon Musk was talking about how you can power the whole United States with, if you take a corner of Utah and put solar there, you can power the whole United States with it. What they don't realize is if we move forward with some of those things and working in conjunction with some of these companies, or the fact that they're not, we have to take into initiative and do it for ourselves at our houses. Giving you the ability, we have a few people here that have kind of moved forward already. Arlene and Bob made the commitment this week. Giving you the ability to transfer from renting what you're renting from Xcel or Sioux Valley, and giving you the ability to actually own your energy and have control over and independence over what you're using and what you're consuming. It's just one of those, brings back earlier, a gentleman, I don't think he's here anymore, but he brought up how we talk about it, or when Doctor was talking about when it comes to when it comes to communicating it to certain people, and people don't realize, or what people do is, when it's something new, specifically in the state, but when there's something new or there's something that's a new concept, those early adapters, like Buns and Arlene and Bob, like the early adapters is people who look into it and take advantage of what the change we're trying to make happen. Once people see that happen, then a lot of change will come, but it's communicating it to certain people in a way that's, we're educating and empowering everybody to realize that it's what's best for everybody, not just in a way that benefits one company like Excel or benefits one company like an installer or benefits the country as a whole, but think globally, not locally. But yeah, so does anybody have any questions when it comes to solar? Yep.
So dealing with the problem of not being able to sell back, currently sell back energy that you would generate at home into the grid at a fair price or at an equitable price. Are there battery options for home for storing that, or is that already tied into the solar roof?
Yeah, so we spoke about this a little bit earlier. When it comes to, I'd say about 60-70% of people in this area currently, even without a battery, it definitely makes a financial sense for, with all the incentives and everything that's going on and transferring over into controlling what you own and what you produce. But what happens is, when you add a battery, even if they are purchasing it back, just not at the rate that they're selling it to you for. What happens is you start a trickle down. It's like a domino effect if you have a battery. So say you don't utilize everything that you've produced throughout the day, because most people are gone from 8 to 5, or even if you work from home, then it's another it just depends how you utilize your usage. But what happens is you have a domino effect of, whenever you're overproducing and under-consuming throughout the day, the 10 kilowatt battery only takes about an hour, hour 15, maybe an hour 20 to fill up. After that, everything that's overproduced during that point is being sent back to sell back to the grid. When you get home and you're there from 4 or from 5 on, that 10 kilowatt battery, typically the usage will not drain between 5 and 7 a.m. So you start this domino effect of filling, feeding the grid, and then as you go down, you can go down 80%, or you can go down 90%, but you're starting the next day 10% ahead. So then that happens on a day-to-day basis. So then after a few weeks, few months, everything, that battery is almost consistently full and you're consistently pushing to the grid, adding credits. So then whenever it's pulled from the grid, if you're not at 100% or 105 or 110% offset system, you're not being charged for that. Now, we have Enphase is what we use. It's a very interactive app that we use that helps you see the production that you're doing, see the consumption, see how your battery's doing. You can work in and off grid, depending on if there's a grid outage, if you have the battery. But when you're overproducing and what you're sending back to the grid, you will have exact results of what's sent back. So then you can actually pay attention and see if they're charging you for more than they should be, essentially.
We can ask questions. I wanted to ask a question,
Yeah.
Stacy.
Yeah.
The Sharapa, I was around with an engineering company when that was being built, and that was LEED certified. And I have found out since that none of the buildings that they're building now on that property are LEED certified. And so at that time, I thought, man, every building is going to start doing this. But from what I understand, they're the only LEED certified building at that level in Sioux Falls, and that nothing's been built like that since. Is that true?
No, that's not really true. But, well, part that is probably true is that the next 3 buildings that they're putting up are not LEED certified, although they did talk about that development. We're not working on it. They did talk about that development going ahead with certification, but I don't think they are. But as far as Sioux Falls, we've worked on a lot of green buildings in Sioux Falls, and on the board back here, it has it doesn't say what it is specifically for each building, but there are, other LEED certified buildings like, in the downtown area, the Museum of Visual Materials, Courthouse Square, Raven Industries, the City Center building that was, recently completed.
Quick Trip.
Quick Trip, yeah, which is not one that we worked on, which you should probably. Yeah, some of the gas station buildings, and you can go in and see, the McDonald's is, you could go in and see a plaque, certification plaque. They usually proudly display that because it takes a little bit to do that kind of thing.
Oh man, I guess I should call on.
Yeah.
The moderator, good, I'm moderating, in the back. And there's two right by each other, so I suppose I'll have to fight.
Quick question, and I think if possible, kind of suggestion, for getting education out to more people about this. And I'm saying also partly because I'm not a really scientific minded person, and I'm catching a little bit like that. But I'm very pro, like, let's get these buildings out, partly cost effective, I know, and health issues. I don't know if anybody's thought about that or discussed. So my question and kind of suggestion is, would you consider doing something more like with your company, that would be something like the town hall version for getting, especially more education out to the public, by also having people who started doing this to help in presenting about, what benefits they gain, to help introduce it, because I realize there is a problem with benefits. I want to support this.
Yeah, so because we're relatively new, we haven't had all of the avenues to gather with the community and talk about what we bring and the education that we can help provide to the community. But we were making great success at the beginning part of the year, getting involved with the community Chamber of Commerce, the HBA, the Home Builders Association, and then all the craziness, ensued late spring, right? The derechos, the hailstorms. So unfortunately, because people's livelihoods were in peril because of their roofs and siding, we had to unfortunately tone back on solar a little bit. Now that the region and the area is in a different path and a different direction, we're now having this ability to sit down and explore these avenues and get in front of individuals like yourselves and really educate and see what's out there, that there are companies that are here to help provide solutions to everyday problems and for the future, right? So to answer your point, yes, we're exploring more, and if any of you have different avenues for us to sit down and meet with the community, we'd love to talk to you at the table. So.
Sounds good. Thank you. Do other people, okay, back, next.
Hunter, regarding the cost of the batteries, can you talk about, the past costs, future costs, effectiveness, what to expect?
Well, I know that annual averages, solar costs, batteries and materials have dropped about 80% over the last 6 years. When it comes to total cost, I'd say normal national average for a single family home, we're looking, this is me giving you a generalized, it depends on the usage of the house, how you use your usage. But I can tell you that batteries have dropped about half. They used to be about 30 grand. Our best and most efficient battery is about 13 now. So they've dropped about 50% and about 50-60%. Panels themselves, system cost on annual average for a single family home is anywhere between 20 and 35 total. Looking at that from a perspective of, you have the 30-year warranties, there's a 25-year workmanship warranty that covers installation, any reinstallation or deinstallation. So say 10 years down the road, you need a new roof, covers us coming out, taking the panels off, and then redoing the roof and then putting the panels back up. If the panel were to ever have an electrical issue, covers service technicians to come out and take a look and get their stuff taken care of. So you don't have to pay that $80 or $100 service technician fee anytime. All of that's covered. It's normal, well, inflation right now, just in general, it's around 8 to 12%. Normal annual utility escalations are anywhere between 6 and 8. We're seeing on average a normal household, depending on usage, depending on size, square footage, seeing anywhere between 95 to 150 grand spent on utilities over the next 25 years, given how the last 25 years has worked with escalations. If you look at it from that perspective, the system as a whole may cost 20, 30, 40, whatever it is. But it's less than what for most people, it's less than what would be spent. Even if you're breaking even on day one, you're still adding value to a property and you're making the change, switching over to a more sustainable, energy conscious. I say, even you guys, we were talking about carbon earlier. I did a system last week. It's offset of 6 tons of carbon dioxide. It was one normal system, like 3-bedroom, 2-bathroom house in Brandon, 6 tons. Like it's unbelievable. It's equivalent to the planting of 200 trees. Whether you're breaking even or spending, most people, 70% of people out here, you're spending less than what you normally would. Most people, I mean, you might have another 30% out there that it just might not make full financial sense yet because of their usage. Their bill's too low or way too high. But for most people, you're either saving money day one or breaking even and making the transition into actually having a process of owning what you're renting right now, essentially.
Oh, right there. Yeah, this question is for Ian Kamara. Back to my question from before on the electric car charging station. Are there any besides the Tesla ones around Sioux Falls?
So basically, Billion Nissan, Billion Kia, and Billion Chevrolet all have level 2 charging stations installed already, and actually Kia is the only one that has the CCC port quick charge. So Kia dealership, if you guys know where that one's at, they've got one located there, free to use for the general public. All of our chargers are free at Billions for anyone. To specifically answer your question, they do make adapters for the Tesla charging stations now. The one thing that they were having trouble a couple of years ago was figuring out what are they going to do for the component to charge these vehicles. It's like an iPhone versus an Android. It's that cable. And so basically what everyone's kind of, they haven't said it, but they've agreed that, okay, we're just going to go to combined charge port. That's the United States standard. Everything's going to be combined charge port. And it's the normal, if you guys ever seen a plug-in, who here seen a charging plug-in? A little round thing. Okay, so you're familiar with that, right? Do you know what CCC is? It's an extra plug-in right below it that looks like almost like an infinity symbol, little 8. And then you'll have a plug-in that combines those two, and that's level 3 charging. So that's what you'll find at the Kia dealership. Chevrolet and Nissan are just level 2, so it's just that singular round plug-in, and you're free to come by anytime and charge your car there. You also mentioned the parking garages, right? So what do we do in these situations where, okay, well, maybe it's not convenient to go and charge at a dealership? The question that you need to ask yourself before that is, how much driving are you doing per day? And do you have access to a wall outlet? Because all of these ports, no wall outlets at all in the parking garage? Not at all? Oh, good Lord. So I'd be, talking to the owners of those buildings to find a way to run even an extension cord. All you need is a wall outlet for these electric cars. So when talking about infrastructure, I think everyone kind of imagines that, I can't operate an electric car unless I have like a 40 amp huge circuit or something that if I don't have access to that, I can't operate an electric car. But that's not necessarily true either. Let's say you're doing 10 miles a day or 15 miles a day. And of course, I don't know your driving habits, but some of these cars are getting up to 150, 200, 250, 300 miles per charge. That might mean that you only charge once every 2 weeks, once every week, once every 3 or 4 days. And so while it might be a little convenient, there's ways that you'll essentially trickle charge your car the same way that we charge our phones. We don't charge our phones once a week, we charge it every single day, right? So the easiest solution is how do we get to that, just plugging it somewhere. The parking garage is a challenge, I'm not gonna argue with you there. It would be good to see some kind of an outlet installed somewhere where they wire that in, and you don't need a 40 amp circuit to charge an electric car, you just need a wall outlet.
Okay, so those adapters, does the consumer have to have the adapter, or does whoever has the Tesla stations, do they have?
That would be the consumer, yeah.
Okay.
At this point, it's the consumer, yeah. Probably.
And are there any, besides the dealership in those Tesla ones, are there any others around town?
Yankton Trail Park has some, we've got some businesses going up around town that are installing charging. It's very slow, unfortunately, but with this whole Inflation Reduction Act, a part of this that's set aside for infrastructure, we're really, I think, me especially as a car guy, really hoping that some of those funds are funneled into level 2 charging stations that are accessible for the general public. And it's not something you're gonna use every day, so.
And I'll say, let Chris follow up, because you had mentioned something about
that,
houses, yeah.
Yeah, we do a lot with, well, if we look, let's say Sioux Falls has adopted the 2021, I know it's a year-old code now, but that does require all businesses to have 3% of their parking spots to be wired with the charger. And then you have to have the next 10% total with conduit and ready to go. So it is in the code, actually, and like if you're in Minnesota, you'll see it a lot. Minnesota has a program through their utility companies, and through the Public Utility Commission, that help offset those costs right away. They started back in 2018, giving money to businesses to help implement that faster.
I say, usually you can go to like plugshare.com and they'll show you where all the locations are. And your car is usually smart enough to show you on the map where those locations are as well. So then they'll kind of guide you to where you can get charged.
Yeah, we have it the worst in the Midwest, unfortunately. I mean, I'm not gonna argue that, right? I mean, you go anywhere else, the Midwest is very rural. We just don't have the infrastructure established as of today, but it's getting there, so.
Man, too many questions, in the red, I said.
I was just wondering, have they done like for a survey with, these electric cars with the cold temps here in the Midwest?
There's been, in terms of how the charging battery.
And how they run the whole.
Yeah, absolutely. So there's enough data out there to show you that in extreme cold, let's just say you're doing worst case scenario here, and you're parking outside, you got a 40-degree below windshield, you're not preheating your car's not plugged in, you're probably gonna spend 15 to 20% of your battery's capacity just heating that battery up and getting it from the absolute worst case scenario. Now, the easiest thing you can do, keep your car plugged in. If you're outside or an extension cord, keep it plugged in. The battery will maintain 72 degrees. Now, this is on older models. The new models all have hybrid heating and cooling pumps. So I'll give you a specific example. The Nissan Ariya that's coming out, I know they have special integrated hardware so that the battery is always at 72 degrees, whether you're plugged in or not. So batteries want to be at 72 to 75 degrees to operate it most efficiently. And if you're not keeping it there, of course, you're going to spend some energy getting it up there. But if you're hearing rumors about like, oh, I lost 50% of my battery capacity because I had to charge it, that's just not true. That's not true in any case that I've ever seen. So.
I'm not sure who can answer this, and my question probably reveals how much I don't know about the science. But I know we have business sectors and residential sectors that are really pretty integrated. People like like to be able to walk across the street to Walgreens or something. Are there any collaborations between residents and businesses where for either solar or some other technology, it's going to benefit the business because residences can have solar panels that run to the business, so to speak, in terms of those who have opportunities to purchase these batteries, for instance, and those who are maybe less financially able to afford this right now, but still want to jump on and look for ways that they can get on board. Is there anything like that?
We spend a little bit more time, that would be, as of right now, would be a little bit more focused towards more commercial buildings like apartment buildings or the big commercial buildings with 18 Dynamic Avenue, like with 18 separate units and different tenants.
Sure.
To where the owners and the businesses get to take advantage of the incentives from a business side, but then the tenants get to utilize the cheaper costs. If you're referring to creating energy and dispersing it in other areas,
Yes.
so like a business and then residentials that are
Or
close,
residence to business.
Yeah.
In other words, yeah.
not to my knowledge that there's anything like, in Sioux Falls, definitely not, but not to my knowledge that there's anything close to that yet. That's a very good point, and it should.
This Inflation
I'm just
Reduction
looking
Act
for
does
alliances
cover
that
that.
can happen to make this
They had an
feasible
incentive for
for
another
realistic for
30%.
people. I'm sorry.
So this, the Inflation Reduction
I'm
Act,
wondering, can people hear him if he doesn't have the mic? Sorry.
I have to use the mic.
Use the mic. I'll make sure that.
Okay, the Inflation Reduction Act actually there's a bonus programs and structures set up. So for the solar act part of it, you get your 30% of being a residential, but then there's an additional 30% that you can get for doing, it's called community solar. And so those incentives are there. We're seeing the first viable one was actually done last week by Orton Housing. It's one of the national builders, and they just came out with their first community solar project. So it's a very niche market right now, but they're hoping to break that out.
What's the definition of community?
Anybody that's tied together. So it could be everybody in one block, it can be everybody in a neighborhood, it could be everybody around a school, it could be everybody around an apartment complex.
I know nothing about zoning, but it seems like win-win. If you get neighborhoods
Mhm.
next to businesses to say, this business wants it and needs it, and these neighborhoods want to but can't fork out
Yeah.
it just seems like a no-brainer for especially for established neighborhoods already that would like to play their part. It's not build from ground, a new building, but, I don't know.
I just wanted to build on that a little bit, and Hunter was also kind of talking about it, where with extra power earned through your photovoltaic system flows back onto the grid. Well, it's the more houses, schools, buildings that do that, they become a microgrid of their own. And California actually is buying back through aggregators that go to different houses or businesses that have photovoltaics, and they're buying this spare energy at $2 a kilowatt hour. And it knocks off the peak demands because they have the rolling blackouts and whatnot. But that's called microgrid.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, and I should note, it's 12:05, which I had lost track of time.
We have some buffer time, it's okay.
Okay, so a couple more questions, and I think the panelists will be here to answer questions, yes.
Till 12:30.
My
Yeah, we're
question
doing
is for
Q&A
Ian.
till 12:30.
Oh, Q&A till 12:30,
Yeah,
good,
it's supposed to
good.
begin at 12.
Oh, good, it began at 12, good. See, this is how
We
it's good,
started
we have
early.
half an hour, plenty of time, sorry.
And we have the room, nothing's in here afterwards, if you want to stay and visit, perfect. Next.
My question's for Ian. Yeah. Is there any talk, I think they've done it or attempted to do it in other countries as far as vehicles. Is there any talk in the city structure to add EV charging points at city lights, the street lights and stuff like that?
Oh, well, this would be an infrastructure question for, I think, you guys actually. I mean, charging points at a street light, you mean, or what exactly are you
Yeah,
referring to?
is there any talk or thoughts about using this, there's already power running to our street lights.
Right.
Whether it be in a residential neighborhood or if it's in the city structure, Phillips Avenue or any of the places there's parking, or even a parking meter. Is there any talk or even thought about setting up charging ports for EV cars in the future? Is there any thoughts that far ahead?
Probably not. I see your point though. If you already have the lines running there, it's a source of electricity, right? All we need is an outlet. Like if they just install 4 outlets on those.
Right, you
like a
just have a
stoplight.
credit card charge, so I mean, you
Yeah.
can literally park at a meter, pay for your meter,
Yeah.
and then also buy your power that's going back into your EV vehicle.
Yeah, so I know that Sioux Valley has one at their facility in Brandon. There's a meter there. I can't remember the company that installed that, but it's like that. Buy your power, charge your car. Now, for the most part, for any of these, the earlier infrastructure, like I mentioned earlier, like you can come to Billy and Nissan or Chevrolet with your electric car, and you don't even have to buy it from us. We're never gonna bother you, just plug in. In fact, we like to see you using it. You know, we've got 3 chargers at the Nissan store and there's 2 chargers at the Chevrolet store, and those are free. You don't have to pay for the electricity. So just come by and charge if you have an electric car. In terms of.
It could get to be a big line.
It could, but it kind of plays back into, kind of the first basic question is, you know, I guess, show of hands, how many of you guys in here drive 40 or 50 miles a day? 80, okay, that's all right. I know that that's gonna exist, right? So that was like 2-3 people, right? So everyone else, if you're driving less than 40 or 35 miles a day, you're the ideal client. We understand that we're not building electric cars. No one is building electric cars for the person that's doing 30,000 miles a year. Can we agree on that? Does that sound right? So the entry level here, the where electric vehicles are really gonna be utilized most is anyone doing in-city driving, not doing 500 miles a day, right? And I think if you survey rooms and rooms and rooms of people, you'll find that 95% of the people in these rooms are the ideal client. They're gonna charge in their car every night. They're gonna be ready to go in the morning, right off of a wall outlet. You don't need a level 2 charging port in your home if you're not doing more than 40 miles a day. So that's just my opinion. That's the vision that I see going forward, and it's the easiest way to start early adoption. So if there are things that are preventing you from buying an electric car like that, they shouldn't even be in the way. It's not a factor for most people's driving, so.
I would say too, something like the Prius Prime that
Oh, yeah.
has, you can do 80 miles
Yeah.
with electric, and then if you do have to drive longer, it kicks over to gas.
Yeah, so plug-in hybrids, the 2 things you're gonna see a lot of is going forward, you're gonna see hybridization of the fleet, right, which is what Toyota's doing, and then you're gonna see electrification, which is what General Motors and Nissan is doing. Those are 2 very specific examples. Question?
Yeah, I've been an electric vehicle owner for a little over 3 years. And I'll confirm what Ian said, that if you plug in, you're gonna get 50 miles of charge just by your 120 volt outlets. And the other thing that a lot of people aren't aware of is XL Energy here in Sioux Falls offers a time of day rate where it's 4 cents a kilowatt hour after 9 o'clock at night. And
It's extraordinarily cheap.
which is very cheap, because I think it's probably around 12 cents. Now, of course, the trade-off is your costs are higher off peak. I think it's like 18 cents.
Right.
But my wife and I, we went to that plan, and our cost of electricity, because you program these cars so they only charge during the cheap rates.
Yeah.
You plug it in, then at 9 o'clock it starts charging. So you're charging your car at 4 cents a kilowatt hour. And like my car gets about 3.5 miles a kilowatt hour. So I'm basically driving for a penny a mile. So.
That is about what it comes out to. I did do it's weird because I can talk on this for hours, guys, I'm sorry. So especially when we get into actual savings, like I'll give you my best customer. I understand it's not fair, but I do have a client that lives in Parker that drives to town here and back every day for work. She does 25,000 miles. She saves somewhere between 25 and $3 grand a year in gas costs. And this was back when gas was not $4 a gallon. So now every time I see her in the service drive, she's just smiling year to year because it's so much savings. So there's so much to talk about on electrical savings too for vehicles.
And I think, sir, did you have one over there?
I'm curious, who would I contact to find out what I can afford? I have an older house, built in the 20s, and what could I afford to do? What are my limitations? I mean, to just give me an overall idea, or would I contact you individually, or is there an entity that can give me some sort of an answer what I can do?
Yeah, if anyone could speak to this, because the ideal, if we're trying to learn about things, is there ways that there are resources to help people just generally get information about a suite of things that they could do?
I would say contact both of us. What we do at Wagner Roofing and Solar is we come out, we do a full property inspection regardless of what brings you to us, right? We're gonna come out there, we're gonna take a look at everything from the windows to the siding to the roof. We're gonna get on your roof and do a roof inspection. No obligation, just because that's just what we do. Why put, say, hypothetically speaking, why put $50,000 on your roof if your roof is 20 years old and gonna be compromised in 3, right? So we take a look at all of those factors, and then we sit down, Hunter, myself, or any of the other consultants would sit down with you and talk about and look at your energy consumption, and if you would be a candidate for solar. Now, on the Johnson side, Johnson would have a full other different, checklist that they would want to go through, inside out type deal, as opposed to outside in.
Okay, and so what, does Johnson Environmental only do new properties?
No, we do existing also.
And would it be that like someone, I mean, because some could do, are you just losing heat from in the house? I mean, what would you say from different perspectives, right? If someone is just trying to figure out like, where am I at? What are my options? But without having to individually look up different people, is there a way to do that?
Typically, what we would do is it's just called a home energy audit. We do them for the co-ops and electric companies too. You can call them and they call us to come out and do them. But we set up a blower door, we depressurize the house to 50 pascals, which is the same as a 20-mile-an-hour wind hitting all 4 sides of your building. We have infrared guns so we can see if the windows are leaking, if there's any insulation missing in the walls and the attic areas. We just have those checklists that we go through, and we, here's the best, here's the fastest, easiest, cheapest. We can set you up a game plan to get you where you want to go.
And is that something people would pay? You would call
Typically,
your co-op and then,
It's about $300 a house.
and they would call their co-op, or they would call.
They can call us
company
directly and we can line it up to their electric company, just whoever your utility is. And then also with the new Inflation Reduction Act, I hate to keep preaching about it, but it does give you a $1,200 tax credit to get an audit done. So there is some incentives all over the board now.
So you're saying it costs $300, but you get a $1,200 credit?
In South Dakota, I don't charge that much.
No, you don't get a $1,200 credit, you get what you spend.
Yeah.
Okay, up to whatever you spend. I gotcha. That's even clear.
I just wanted to encourage the gentleman here in the front row that was asking about the city chargers.
Yeah.
If you would contact Holly Meyer, who I think she left, but she's the city sustainability coordinator, and they're going through looking at the sustainability plan. And so having your voice heard to that matter, you may not be the only one.
It just makes sense. I mean,
Yeah, it does.
it would also pay for the meter. I mean, it's a way the city could make money, and when it's not, the meter's there already. And so, it seems like a simple solution.
Yeah, it makes sense. And actually, our company is looking at purchasing an electric vehicle, and I had a conversation with her, hey, is there some way that we could partner with the city to put in a charging station that would also be public? And she got excited about that because it was an actual implementation project they could work on as part of the sustainability plan. So sometimes you just have an idea, have a conversation, and then it can become something.
Thank you for answering.
Okay, well,
I have 2 different questions. For the cars, what's the shelf life of a battery? And are they eco-friendly for disposal?
Great question. So the standard battery warranty on pretty much every manufacturer right now is an 8-year, 100,000-mile battery warranty. They also have the same 5-year 60K powertrain and the same 3-year 36 bumper to bumper. So when you say shelf life of a battery, what I can tell you from the data that they've collected so far is that because of the battery warranty and because they're lithium-ion batteries right now, you're going to lose a small portion of your capacity over time, right? It'd be the same way that an older car may not be as fuel efficient as it was when it was brand new. From what I've seen, the charts that Nissan put together is after 8 years, they expect that battery to still be at 85% capacity after 8 years. If it drops below 85%, it's covered under warranty and it's replaced for free. So you get a brand new battery.
I missed what he said about the Second question.
The disposal.
Disposal.
Yeah, yes, so, that is a really cool segment of science where they're working on things called like hydrometallurgy. Most people have never heard of that, but it's a new process to recycle the battery components. So far, they're seeing, processes that are about 90% efficient, with some waste, of course, that you lose in the process, but I think the idea that a lot of people have in their heads is that when they're trying to dispose of these batteries, they just bury them. And they just, it's so toxic, but that's not the case right now. They're actively working on improving that segment of science. And if you look up, just Google hydrometallurgy, and there's hydro, which is water, and then there's a pyrometallurgy. Those are two of the most leading efficient processes for recycling these battery components. And then there's a whole other logistics conversation in that whole segment. But know that it is evolving every week, every day, every month, every year. And they're coming up with more efficient ways to recycle these batteries, essentially.
I was gonna say too, the regular car batteries.
Yeah.
That's one of the most successful recycling that there currently is. So there's huge incentive or industry history of doing this, so I just.
Yeah, it's just something that a lot of people don't know about, and unless you're really actively looking for that information, you hear the rumors and then you go off the rumors. They're just, again, they're not true, so.
Ian, isn't it true that, you can change the life expectancy of the battery if you don't go past 80% in a full charge?
So I actually, I want to say yes, but I'm not the expert here. I remember I attended a presentation at Brandon Valley, at one of the Ride and Drive events. We had a gentleman out there that was a PhD in this particular segment, and he was talking about something called depth of discharge. So the way a lithium-ion battery operates is that if you're constantly draining it to zero and then charging it, draining it to zero and then charging it, you're going to get less what they call charge cycles out of it. And so the same thing with the lithium-ion battery in a car. If you're charging it every night, which is again the ideal way to operate these electric cars, you're going to see that 85% or better capacity. We've got 2013, 14, 15 Nissan Leafs out there with full capacity still because they've been well taken care of. So the idea that a battery is just going to go bad after 5 years, again, not true. After 8 years, not true. That'd be saying that you bought a car with a 5 or 60K powertrain warranty and your engine's going to blow up right at 61,000 miles. We all know that that's not true. It all comes down to how well you take care of it. Okay, great questions.
Yes, sir.
I want to go to this charging. You're talking about just plugging into an outlet.
Yeah.
I take it that's level 1.
Correct.
Charging. But you still need a charger. I mean, you still need a portable level 1 charger to plug into that?
No, every Leaf, and it does vary from manufacturer, okay? So let me give you the example here. Every Nissan Leaf comes with a charging cable that is level 1, so it has a wall outlet like this. I could plug it in right here if I had an extension cord.
Right.
Okay? And then they have a level 2 adapter. That's a Nissan specific thing. So basically, if you have all you would need to do in your home is wire in a additional washer outlet.
So it takes 220. Then that's when you're talking about the amperage and.
Yeah, 42 amps is the standard for that, if I remember correctly. You would know a lot better than I would. But yeah, that way you never trip it plugging in that car. But I think the broader sense of it is that, when we think about everyone buying an electric car, like, oh no, we're going to blow the grid. And the thing that we forget is that peak electricity usage at these utilities always happens earlier in the day. When it's nighttime, everything else is off. So if like, let's just say 10% of Sioux Falls had an electric car, you're not going to blow the grid because that draw is less than probably what their peak is during the midday. So just something to keep in mind.
Right in the back, yeah.
Real quick, so am I correct, I guess, first of all, because I'm not super knowledgeable, but I'm interested. I think there are some cars being manufactured, whether it's Nissan or others that are half, regular, old cars, gas, and half EV, electric vehicles.
Yeah, like a hybrid.
A hybrid, that's the term, okay. So, what I was wondering, I was thinking in terms of, getting them charged, are there some different, for those kind of cars? Is there some different type of charger or adapter that's needed for hybrid cars versus all electric?
Sure, that's a great question. So, I'll give you the easy example. First model years of the Toyota Prius, they're hybrid, they're what's called just a hybrid car. So they have a small, like, I think it's like an 8 to 10 kilowatt per hour battery that's with there. And they have an onboard generator that is ran by the combustion engine to charge that battery once it's depleted. That is different than a plug-in electric hybrid, where you have the option to plug in a hybrid car. So a standard hybrid car takes care of itself. You just do the driving. A plug-in hybrid car is going to primarily use the electric part first, specifically for the majority of us who are not driving more than 20 miles a day, right? You're going to do all your daily stuff on just the hybrid part. And then let's just say you do go out of town. Now your combustion engine kicks in. So the electric is for all the in-town short trips in, all the low miles per day. And then the hybrids will still be available for the people that are the unique ones in the room that are doing 300, 400, 500 miles a day, right? So those are the solutions that are coming in. There are plug-in hybrids and hybrids that qualify for tax credits.
But the plug-in, whether it's a plug-in hybrid or a plug-in electric vehicle, the charging is the same.
Yeah, the charging is the same, yeah.
But the hybrids aren't part of the tax credits.
A standard hybrid is not, a plug-in hybrid is.
And in the back.
So I'm just wondering about the solar aspect of with a home. I know that there's stuff on the roof that collects all the sun that heats our house terribly over the summer with no trees. But what else do you have to install? What else has to happen with that home to harness that power? When you put solar on your roof.
The system's gonna hold, so we'll start off with the panels. How the panels work is sunlight hits it, voltage and temperature are gonna rise. That's gonna transfer data from the micro, so the old systems used to be called single phase string systems, where if one system had 20 panels or whatever it was, and there was one inverter. So one inverter would collect all the data. If one panel were to go out, the entire system would stop working. What we do is, it's called a microinverter system. Each panel has a separate microinverter. Each microinverter takes in the data for each panel separately. Those are transferred over to what's called the Enphase Envoy, which is what collects the data. That happens every 15 minutes. Envoy is like the brain of the system. It transfers over to what's called a combiner. That's what's connected into your meter and kind of relays the data to what you'll have, it's called Enphase Enlighten. It's an app on your phone that shows you what's produced, what's consumed, what's charged, how each panel's working, whether each panel's working efficiently or not. We'll get notifications on whether, say you're out of town and one panel stops working, we'll get notifications from our production end and be able to send an electrician out to fix it before you guys are even home. So it goes through a trickle down of panel, microinverter to the Envoy and combiner, and then that combiner is what connects to the main breaker and meter of the house.
What are the electrical needs for a system like that? Because I wanted to buy a plug-in heater for this winter.
Yeah.
And our outlets can't take more than 15 amps.
Typically, your main breaker needs to be over 150 amp for your main breaker of your entire house. Typical houses are 200 amp main breakers. If you're around that range, you will not run into any issues.
And there's this perception, like, when people start talking about electric cars and solar on the houses, then the people that don't want to open their mind to that will often say, well, in California, they're lining up for hours just to charge their car. And they'll say, what if the electric grid goes out? Then we're all kind of screwed. So those are the people that'll say, I'd rather stick with my natural gas and just, do the traditional kinds of things. And I'm like,
yeah, and then if the grid goes out, then you don't have energy.
right.
If you do solar with battery, then you have the smart switch, which basically it auto-populates your own grid for your own property. And then if the grid goes out, you can control and never really deal with the grid outage, essentially.
And they're not gonna be able to pump gas.
Okay, because I sense that there's this subtle feeling that people have, like, they don't really want to depend on everyone else for their needs when something really chaotic happens.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like, there's been a lot of weird stuff happening, power grids going out, you know, really weird weather, like who would think we would have 2 durations in 2 months? You know, like that's really strange. So it's like, I guess I'm like, if people embrace the idea of solar and electric car, before other people do in a region like this, is it a tough road or are there resources out there that it could be workable?
I can answer that, it's a tough road. Because you're the gateway. But when you think about reframing the concept, one of the things South Dakota is fantastic about is their self-sufficiency. They are farmers and they are ranchers and they can do it on their own and they don't need government help and they don't need Big Brother. And solar paneling, water conservation, checking out your windows, insulation, all of that feeds into that mentality of doing it on your own. You don't have to go off grid in order to do it on your own. And that's definitely something that we've encountered. So I would say that. And the guy with the 1920 house, your house is not at 200 amps, it's closer to 100. And I think, Hunter mentioned this, that you might need to increase your breaker box, which goes under a tax credit if you get, and a rebate as well, because it's an upgrade.
So incentivizes you to upgrade that.
Right.
Anything you do partnered with the solar is in addition to the tax credit. What happens for businesses, so I didn't really touch on this, what happens for businesses too, so homeowners and for residentials, you get 30% as a tax credit. For businesses, if you work from home or you have another business that has a location, you get to reap the benefits of the 30%, and then you use depreciation of the system as an 80% to 100% deduction of the entire system. So then you're not just getting 30% as a tax credit, you get to write off basically the whole system. That's kind of where those business incentives are pretty high. Like, we're doing a lot of work with, like, hopefully it goes through, but Clean Ride Auto Spa is a big one. They use anywhere between $5,000 and $7,000 a month in electricity costs because they have the clean bean in the coffee shop, they have a dog spa, they have obviously everything. So other places like chiropractors or physicians' offices or real estate offices, just anywhere that's banks typically that are only using their energy between 8 and 5, you don't necessarily need to throw extra into getting a battery, but the usage at night is so low that it makes financial sense to do that, and you get to utilize the depreciation as a whole for the business. Residentials, the incentives are still, they're basically giving it away. So over the next 10 years, I use this metaphor, it's just a metaphor, but based off of how history has worked in the past, by the metaphor I like to use is cigarettes. So when cigarettes came out, no one really knew it was bad for you. Everyone kind of smoked. People did. They threw cancer logos on it, did basically anything that they could to get people to stop. They had to raise tariffs like 15% for people to actually slow down and then kind of transition. Based off of how history has worked in the United States, doesn't matter who's in office, the amount that they're incentivizing with 30% over the next 10 years, plus hedging inflation, plus owning your own power, like the amount that's incentivized over the next 10 years, one of two things are gonna happen. Either rates are gonna be so high at the end of 10 years that you will feel penalized for not having solar, or taxes for other forms of energy will be so high, so you will definitely be penalized for not having solar. It's an hour of solar, it takes 1 day of solar, 1 day of solar sun energy from a global perspective is equivalent to a year of all forms of energy, like fossil fuels, nuclear, all those other forms of energy. 1 day is equivalent to 20 days of those combined from a year perspective.
I just want to make a statement. I hope that you guys are able to take something like this across South Dakota to these smaller communities. because I think you guys presented a great presentation and having you all here to answer. I think in these small communities, they have a very big lack of information. I think Sioux Falls, we have more resources like this, so thanks a lot. I think it was fantastic.
And to the gal in the back, when you said, is it a tough road? Yes, our upper Midwest thinking sometimes gets the best of all of us, right? I think we can all agree on that. But the transition to be more progressive is happening, right? I think we all can agree on that as well. But it's communities like Sodak 350 and Arlene and Bob and the rest of the organization. So, for us to be able to sit up here and yield questions and talk openly as a group, yeah, you guys are looking for advice from us, but we also want to hear input from you guys too. So I want to thank all of you for showing up. I mean, it's Saturday morning, for God's sakes. You guys, it's cold out. You want to be at home with your families drinking coffee, not here with us. So, I want to give Arlene and Bob and Sodak 350 a shout out too. Hopefully there's more organizations like yourself across the state, or if you guys are looking at doing an outreach program in, say, Mitchell or Huron or Pierre, this might be a good spot, to sit down with peer representatives too. So let us know as a panel if we can help out in any way too.
It's actually a really great segment into my closing remarks here, because we are hitting a little bit beyond time. But yes, thank you so much for the acknowledgement. Again, another round of applause for all our organizers. In closing today, I'd like to remind you of two things. First of all, being the Sustainable Sioux Falls open houses. So we kind of touched on this a couple of times. If there are things that you want to see in Sioux Falls, like EV charging stations or like more accessible transportation opportunities or anything that we've talked about today, they do have 2 more in-person sessions that would be, yes, Kara's back there. She has some information on where to find those. The 15th and the 17th of this month, those 2 sessions will take place. They will begin at 6 o'clock in the evening. Holly Meyer, who was here earlier today, she will be leading those. And they're at 2 of the libraries around town. If you aren't able to make it to any of those opportunities, they do still have open comments available on their website. Again, the pamphlet back there that Kara has some more information on that for you. And again, just showing community support for these initiatives goes a long way, and especially establishing the framework for that sustainability plan, showing that there is community support for things like solar infrastructure, EV infrastructure, more affordable and energy efficient housing. Those things are definitely important to hear from the community on. And the second thing, if you'd like to see more events like this take place throughout the state, Kara does, the brochures that we have a QR code that have the opportunity, yep, right there, Arlene's pointing it out for you.
Back of the agenda.
Yep, the back of the agenda that has all the partners listed on there, there is a QR code. If you would take a moment to scan that, it'll take you to a survey that'll give Sodak 350 some insight on what you want to see happen in our community. So if you'd like to see this show on the road, go to Pierre, go to Mitchell, go to Rapid, or wherever you'd like to see. Or if you'd like to see more information on a different topic that wasn't touched on today, that's an opportunity for you to provide that input and let Sodak 350 know kind of where the community priorities are for individuals like yourself. Also, to stay in touch and figure out what those opportunities are, we do have a newsletter, and so please be sure to sign up for that newsletter. And if you've already done so, you're entered into the drawing for the big basket back there. So I will have Kara draw for that now. If we have an exciting drum roll for that that last drawing here. Do we have the mic? Yes.
So number 39, who is that then?
Well, congratulations to everybody who just won something today. And thank you all for your time. We have a couple last minute items, and then I'll pass the mic over to Arlene here. Again, to sign up for SODOC 350 newsletter, stay informed of ideas, scan the QR code, submit your suggestions for future engagements, and follow SODOC 350 on social media as well to see some highlights of some of the things that they're doing. If you're not on social media, again, there's always the newsletter. One more thing that I do want to put a plug in for those who came in your blue SODOC 350 shirts, please hang around for a moment. We'd love to take a picture of you in front of the banner and recognize everybody whose hard work made today happen. And with that, I will hand the mic over to Arlene.
Well, Abby, you did a great job moderating, and there's just a few little, one thing, we do have some little sheets that talk about our next activity that Kara got arranged. It's going to be at Remedy Brewing Company, right? It's a letter writing campaign. Oh, Jeff, you need to come up here. She has a word to say or two. And so join us. We maybe do some handwriting, old-fashioned letters, and maybe get on the computer and do some emails for the sustainability plan to our city councilors. Jeff, maybe I'll let you have the last word. He's been here since like early 2000s along with the SODOC 350 journey.
Just to add to the letter writing thing here. Everything we do, small as it may seem, from composting to recycling to energy conservation, is certainly important. But I would suggest that if the people in power from the city, county, state, and federal government don't do things, significant things, pretty soon, my granddaughter's future is still looking pretty bleak. So I would exhort everybody to talk about climate at every opportunity and let your government officials know that, well, let's just stop asking for it and demand it, that they do something.
And if you don't do a QR code, you can always just email sodac350group@gmail.com. That's our email.
And thank you very, very much.
Yeah. What do you see?